Our main character was a king called Labyrinth World, level 97, Rodrigo Elrigo. And finally, after 10 years in the game, a new version dropped that let you throw away your old character, get points, and make a new one. Since he was already sick of the old character, he accepted, not knowing he was about to get trapped. The good part is that because of the points he had in the other game, he got 197,000 in this one. The bad part is how he spent those points thinking he was being clever. Everyone in the city is staring, kind of confused. There's this huge guy giving off a dark aura, and there's some idiot hiding behind him. A girl is walking by looking awkward, but the guy grabs her by the arm right away. "Hey girl, tell me where the guild is." She's standing there confused and scared, while the green-clad idiot has no idea what's going on. The whole city thinks this pair is pretty weird. The Jigachad looks at the protagonist and says, "Alright, found the guild. Let's go." With that, the three of them start walking, and the protagonist gains 1 point of notoriety with this Caesar guy. They're walking down an alley while the protagonist is trying to understand how he ended up in this situation. This guy looked like the final boss, the Demon Lord. Where did his points even go? A little earlier, we see he got the option to spend his points, and he was confident because he knew a strategy that worked in the previous game. It was way more worth it to spend points to evolve your minions because their stats were much cheaper. So you'd make a super strong minion, leave it farming for you, and you'd level up faster than everyone else. So he spent the 195,000 he had to create this Caesar. Huge, intimidating. Technically, this thing is 15 years old and has no class. When it appeared, the protagonist said, "Damn, that looks awesome, but it's kind of scary." Still, the important part was that it would obey its master until a message popped up with a tip. In the new version of the Labyrinth, if a subordinate's loyalty drops, they refuse all orders. The protagonist was confused. Hold on. He just spent 10 years worth of points to create this thing, and it won't obey? The system warns that in the worst case, it'll just leave, so he'd better be careful. Back in the alley, he's thinking, crap. No matter how you look at it, this guy doesn't look obedient at all. At this rate, he's gonna kill me the second I mess up. Right when he's thinking he's doomed, there's a little pickpocket kid hiding nearby who comes sprinting, bumps into his leg, and the protagonist immediately gets it. Since he put 0 attribute points into everything because he spent it all on the monster, he falls on the ground like an idiot. Caesar sees him trip like that, and the protagonist freezes. If the subordinate thinks he's a loser, there's no way he'll obey. Caesar is already coming over with that huge hand, but then he says, "Hey boss, you okay?" Our guy is shaking because he's furious that this thing drained all his points, and he's so mad that he snaps at him. "Go to hell." He stands up thinking he just insulted the creature, and it's gonna get even angrier. But Caesar starts thinking, "I went to help my boss, and he cursed me out. This guy is hardcore." The protagonist doesn't get it, while the system says Caesar feels like the kid is going to achieve great things in life. But if that doesn't happen, then the worst-case scenario activates. The protagonist thinks he understands. Caesar has to believe he has potential, but he has no stats at all. How is he supposed to prove that? Right then, a subjugation event triggers. Capture the pickpocket. If he doesn't catch him in 10 minutes, all the money he has, his precious money, will disappear, and the kid is already far away. The protagonist, still angry, says, "Caesar, get that little punk," and Caesar goes, "I'll go get him." Then subordinate Caesar felt a tyrannical energy from you. He takes off like a bullet, while the protagonist thinks, "This guy is my servant, but he's terrifying." Then he turns to the girl who's kind of teary. He tries to talk to her, but she turns around looking annoyed. The protagonist is like, "Why is she staring at me like I'm trash? I didn't do anything, and I even kept Caesar under control." So he changes his expression and says, "Hey, listen. Did you not notice who my subordinate is? If you don't feel like losing your life, you better start behaving." She starts apologizing, but he says he doesn't accept apologies. The poor girl offers a coin, but it's worth so little that he says, "For the love of God, that's useless. Get out of here." Then the system announces that Caesar captured the pickpocket. The protagonist thinks he really is competent, but then the girl's expression changes. And when the protagonist looks, he jumps. Caesar is coming back, dragging the kid tied up on his sword. The system says that in this game you have several options. You can kill the pickpocket, you can get information, or you can just recover your money. And Caesar says the kid tried to hurt him and deserves to learn a lesson. The protagonist is thinking Caesar wants to cut the kid's head off. Then Caesar looks at him. "Hey, why are you shaking? What's the problem?" The protagonist realizes that if he shows weakness, he's the one who's going to die. Caesar is staring, and the protagonist says, "You handled this like garbage." Caesar doesn't get it. "Yeah, but I was so fast, and nobody saw me do anything." The protagonist says, killing someone who doesn't benefit you in any way is pointless. Caesar pauses. Doesn't benefit? Wait, I get it. You want me to find out where this kid's family lives and kill everyone, right? That's the only way to satisfy someone as merciless as you. I'm sorry, boss. I didn't realize how far your evil ideas go. The protagonist is basically crying thinking, no, that's not it. At least notoriety went up by 1. And with that, they recover 200 coins from the kid. The protagonist is shocked. How does this kid have 200 gold coins? And the kid says there were a lot of dumb players today, so he ended up making a good profit. The protagonist realizes the kid is stealing from NPCs, from players, from everyone. So he says, hey kid, you gonna keep stealing from now on? The kid says, no, I'm not. The protagonist says, that's not what I want to hear. He wants the kid to tell some story about a sick mom or an abusive dad and how he has to work hard to make money. That way, the protagonist can get some moral points without killing the kid and getting a bad reputation in the city. But Caesar grabs the kid and says that from now on, everything he steals, a percentage goes to Will. That's what he's saying. 90% of the profits belong to him. The kid says it'd be better if he just stopped stealing, that it's better that way. But Caesar says a little thief like him, who's only good for stealing, wouldn't be good for anything else. He's already drawing his sword, saying if he's waiting to be forgiven by the master, he should just die now. The protagonist is in the background telling him not to do it, while the kid cries, bangs his head on the ground and says, fine. He'll steal a lot every day and hand everything over to Will. The protagonist doesn't understand, while the system says he now has a little thief who will keep stealing for him around the city, and that he promised to pay the kid fees. And because he successfully used his subordinate to intimidate others, he unlocked the charisma attribute. The protagonist thinks there's something wrong with this game. How is acting like that considered charisma? While he's standing there, Caesar says, boss, you're really incredible. You set a trap to squeeze all the money out of him and still turn him into a slave. The protagonist is thinking none of this makes sense. Then he says, Caesar, don't worry. Half of it will be yours. Caesar just says thanks, but our guy notices he didn't gain any loyalty from that. He thought Caesar would say that since he did the work, at least that would be enough, but nope. Then the girl says they've arrived, and the place the guild is in is totally run down. The protagonist thinks it's weird. Normally, where adventurers pick up quests is supposed to be some amazing place in the center of the city, but the guys there are playing that stupid game where you stab your finger, and the gang looks over at the door. Caesar walks in and immediately asks, what are you staring at? Which bastard here wants to die first? The protagonist in the back is like, dude, you've already started beef with everyone. He turns to the girl, where did you bring us? What is this place? She says, what do you mean? Weren't you looking for the criminals guild? The protagonist puts a hand on his head and realizes it's Caesar's fault again because of that face of his. Then the guy behind the counter welcomes them and asks what they want. Are they trying to join the guild? Caesar steps forward and says, yes, that's exactly it. Someone inside says that judging by his appearance, there's going to be blood today. And the guy at the counter says, all right, to join the guild, it's 5 gold. Since you just got to the city, you probably don't even have that, so get out and come back when you do. Caesar slams a pile of coins on the counter, and the guy goes, oh, so you really did have it. Here's the wooden plaque. It's just an ID. Caesar immediately asks, you're trying to sell wood for gold? You're trying to scam my boss? The guys are confused. Boss, who is he talking about? Why is this terrifying guy listening to orders from this weak kid? Another guy drinking says, careful. If he respects him, there's probably something we can't see. But why is he dressed like a newbie? Is he setting a trap so someone tries to mess with him? Suddenly, Caesar shows up behind one of the guys who was laughing at them. The guy turns around confused and asks what it is. Caesar smacks him in the face and he hits the floor. The guy is spilling like 15 liters of blood. Caesar warns them to watch how they talk behind his boss's back or he'll have to kill everyone in the place. He's already ready to draw his sword. Then the protagonist says, Caesar, calm down. Even in alleys and back streets, there are laws that need to be respected. Caesar puts the sword away, says he understands, and goes back to his side. The guy behind the counter is still confused, and the protagonist says, well, since I'm here, I want work and I want a reward. The guy taps the wooden plaque and the criminals guild mission list appears. Hunt rats, beginner difficulty. Money collection, beginner. Patrol, beginner. The protagonist sees that not only are the missions trash, the rewards are trash too. The only decent one is collecting interest from some guy who didn't pay his fees. So he says, alright, I'll take the money collection mission. Tell me where Bill's shop is. The guy is about to give the info, but someone comes up from behind and says, "Hold on. Information isn't free." It's this guy named Hans who says he can take him there for a small price. The protagonist realizes that in this cursed criminals guild, everyone specializes in squeezing money out of other people. Hans starts walking, saying, "Come with me," while Caesar says, "Boss, you really picked something only a real criminal would do. I can't believe we're gonna go squeeze all the money out of the guy who didn't pay the fees." The protagonist is like, "What? No, that's not the plan." Hesitant, he says, "We should respect the criminals guild and make smart decisions." But Caesar is locked in. Hans opens a door, says the way is through there, pulls back a curtain, and the protagonist walks in. He notices there are even some expensive items, but they look kind of old. Then the guy sitting in the back says, well, look who we've got here. It's Bill standing up. "From your vibe, you're not here to sell anything, are you? You with the guild?" Hans looks disgusted because every time the guild comes to collect, Bill deliberately gets his hands dirty. Then Caesar puts a hand on Hans's shoulder, tells him to get lost, and says he'll respect the boss's wishes. He'll follow the rules. He steps up face to face while Bill asks the protagonist what the relationship between them is. Then Caesar offers his hand to Bill, and Bill says it's a pleasure to meet him. Bill tries to shake Caesar's hand, but Caesar just stares. Bill suddenly feels pain. He screams for him to let go. Electric shock through his whole body. Bill drops dead from the handshake. The protagonist wants to know how this monster just killed the NPC like that. How are they supposed to get the money now? But the system gives the reward anyway, 350 gold and interest. Now they're back at the bar, coins on the table. The boss behind the counter is staring, asking, "How did you get the money?" The protagonist says, "Relax. We didn't take any of his items. The rest is your problem. We're not saying anything else." And with that, the money collection mission is completed. But from the looks of it, they're going to end up with 2 silvers out of a total of 350 gold as their contribution. The guy's kind of freaked out, and the protagonist has no clue what's going on. Why does it feel so tense in here? Did the guy who hands out the missions already find out they killed that dude? Then the guy says, "Well, you two clearly wouldn't have any trouble if you went into the labyrinth. So why are you trying to make money doing things like this?" Caesar just answers, "It's how the boss wants it. What's the problem?" But the chubby guy comes up from behind like, "Hey, what was that? That mission is for beginners. You know? You're leaving us with nothing to do." The protagonist turns around and goes, "Yeah, there wasn't any other mission I like. What do you want me to do?" The guy at the counter says, "Enough. Look, you've got plenty of money anyway, so I'll just promote you already. It'll cost 10 gold coins for you to go up 2 ranks. Caesar slams it all down on the table. The boss looks it over and tosses them the medals, saying they're now recognized as skilled people by the Bandits Guild. The protagonist thanks him and reaches to take it, but the guy yanks it back and says he's only lending it for now. The protagonist realizes, hold on. Is this bastard messing with me? And the guy goes, I'm not messing with you. I just have to write down your names and the details. Relax, kid. I'm just joking. Why are you looking at me like you want to kill me? Take it easy. But Caesar grabs him right away, asking what the hell he thinks he's doing, joking around with his master. The boss tells him to calm down. They'll get the medal in a second, and they'll even get a place to live for free. Caesar says he doesn't care. The guy got way too bold making jokes about the boss. He has to apologize properly, or his life ends right here today along with everyone else's. The guy says Caesar is taking it too far, until Caesar swings his sword right next to him, smashes the whole counter, and the guy apologizes, saying, Okay, forget it, let's just drop it. Then he turns to the protagonist and says, yeah, those are sincere apologies. Meanwhile, Caesar tells him to prove he's sincere some other way. The guy pulls out a 100 gold coins and says it's not much, but take it. The protagonist is confused. Wait, a 100 gold coins from an NPC. Honestly, maybe this strategy pays off. But Caesar sees the protagonist smiling and turns to the guy like, see, my boss is laughing at that amount. For the love of God, that's not sincere. The guy looks confused, saying he'll give more money, more stuff. Take this sword, it gives +3 strength. Our guy looks it over. It's actually a decent sword. Nice thin blade, good reach, great for close combat. He's holding it chuckling again, and Caesar turns, snatches the sword, and says it's all trash rewards anyway. The protagonist doesn't really get it. How is he supposed to react? So Caesar stops, then Caesar goes in like he's about to kill the shopkeeper for real, but something blocks his attack. He's confused, and then a girl pops out of a trapdoor up above, asking what all the commotion is. Caesar looks at her and says, "Don't interrupt, you bastard." She gets furious, saying some real lunatics showed up at the guild. What was the filthy one's name? Caesar says his name and tells the bastard to say hers too. She thanks him for the compliments and says her name is Lena, Your Highness. The protagonist is totally lost. How is this girl acting like that in front of Caesar? Was she trying to die? Caesar says he'll warn her one last time. She better not interrupt again. Seriously, he won't stop insulting her. Now she's the one raging, saying he already knows her name, so he's insulting her on purpose. The protagonist doesn't get why she's provoking Caesar. Can't she see how dangerous he is? At the same time, Caesar seems like he's hesitating. Normally, he would have already cut her throat. That means the girl standing there is just as dangerous as he is, and she looked really quick when she defended herself. Caesar has 10 base agility, which is insanely high. He's the kind of monster who shouldn't even be that fast. But if she blocked him and is still moving like that as she drops down, she probably has the opposite of his stats. That's a problem because he shouldn't be picking a fight with someone that's strong this early. But he can't tell Caesar to back off or Caesar's loyalty will drop. So awkwardly trying to break the ice, he says, "Is your name Lucy or Lena again? I don't remember. Let me ask you something. When a lackey messes up, whose fault is it? The boss's or the assistant's?" She thinks for a second and tells him to stop making things complicated. But the protagonist says all he wants is for that guy to apologize sincerely. She pauses, then kicks at a coin on the floor, snatches it out of the air, says she heard they're trying to join the guild. So why are these idiots talking about killing the guy who hands out missions? Two pieces of trash like them should start by cleaning the floor and the windows before demanding anything. The protagonist thinks this bastard is making total sense, which just makes him even angrier. So he says, "Hey Lena, take a look at my stash here. Ever seen a beginner with this much stuff?" She practically drools, saying you could buy the whole shop with that. How does a beginner have something like that? The protagonist says, let's just say he has a kind of information no amount of money can buy. She says she's interested in how he's making that much cash so fast. And also, why does that guy keep calling him boss? What's his name? The protagonist says his name is Will Mayer. Clearly, she doesn't run on logic because she's drooling again, saying his name is cool and he can make money. So that's that. From now on, she won't get involved in this problem anymore. The guy at the counter goes, "Hey, Lena, hold on. You know your job is to protect me in here, right?" But she just flips away acrobatically, wishing him good luck. The trapdoor closes and the guy's stuck. I thought Caesar might hesitate for a second, but nope. Caesar just split his head open. Caesar's notoriety goes up by 10 and the protagonist goes up by 20. He can't believe that on their first mission they killed the guy who gives quests. Then we see that a little earlier, Lena was bored because the old guys in that bar did nothing but tell dirty jokes and drink. She felt useless having to stay there protecting a bunch of trash. If it weren't for this whole farming contribution thing, she would have left already. That's when Caesar's brawl woke her up. She went to check what the fight was about. She saw everyone running and Caesar leaking that aura, forcing the guy to apologize. Not to him, but to his boss. She thought, wait, this guy has a boss? Who's the boss of someone like that? How can an existence that huge be taking orders from anyone? Then she noticed, weirdly, that the boss looked like a normal lazy guy. Even his clothes were trash. Then she saw the boss hand over 100 gold coins and thought, damn, he's about to get a 100 gold. But the boss didn't look happy at all. What kind of weird face was that? He really looked dissatisfied, and his face is ugly too. My god. Even after the boss handed over a super sword, that guy still had this look like, I can't believe you gave me garbage like this. Then, out of nowhere, Caesar went to kill the boss, and she was sure this guy was some kind of psycho. Killing the mission giver was basically suicide. She jumped in to stop the mess and was shocked when he pulled out that stash. In that moment, she knew that whoever this beginner was, she had to get close to him. The reason is that the VR machine the protagonist used to enter the game was out of sync, and some of his facial expressions come out wrong. Back in the present, right when the guy's head gets cut off, guild assistant dead, the protagonist knows that if the rest of the guild puts out a mission to kill Caesar, even the two of them together won't be able to handle it. This is insane. But then again, nothing has been normal from the start. So he turns to Caesar. Hey Caesar, do you realize you just do whatever you want? Again, you messed up. Caesar says he's already learned the boss's mind. Honestly, he should have tortured that guy and killed a few more people. He really is a terrible, disloyal servant. The protagonist thinks at least that last part is true. This bastard doesn't obey. Suddenly, Lena shows up saying, wow. The boss really is cruel. She's never seen someone so cold-blooded complaining that a subordinate didn't torture someone. The protagonist is confused. This is where she came back. Caesar tells her not to open her mouth to say the obvious. Of course, the boss of the biggest dark organization that's going to destroy the world would be cruel. The protagonist thinks this bastard is unbelievably cringe. He's the one who's going to get treated like an idiot. But Lena says that's interesting, drops down from the ceiling, and says she's a professional in protection and assassination. She also has connections with the criminal guild, and it's more than obvious she's a stunning beauty. A rare girl like her is clearly the kind of talent the boss needs. The protagonist is confused. In the same sentence, she called herself amazing and also an assassin. None of this makes sense. So he asks, "Do you even listen to what you're saying?" But she steps closer and says she knows everything. Now she's figured out why this manic murderer is following a boss like him. The protagonist tells her to get lost, but she won't shut up, saying she's sure. He just revealed he wants to build an organization to take over the world. If something that incredible is really going to happen, she wants in because it's way better than the criminals guild. She gets right up close and says that for now she's going to register with his guild and he should know she charges a fixed rate. The protagonist refuses, saying he's not paying her anything, but she takes it like he accepted her and just didn't give her a salary. And she gets happy, saying he really is cruel. She's part of his team now. Caesar is watching like, my boss is going to enslave this woman, and his loyalty goes up by one more. The protagonist is lost. He said he's not giving her anything, so why does she look happy? But now that's his duo, a crazy murderer and an assassin. Clearly, this lunatic is just Caesar, but the female version. Then the scene cuts to the middle of the city. The protagonist is still confused, and Caesar asks if that girl is going to be okay. She waved goodbye, telling him not to worry. She already memorized everyone's faces. The protagonist just says, "Don't worry about it, Caesar. I don't want to waste time on stuff like that." Caesar apologizes. He forgot the boss doesn't care about his subordinates. The protagonist puts a hand to his face and decides to test what Caesar's deal is. He needs to figure out how this guy's psychology works. Then he sees a little girl crying and says, "Go on, Caesar. What do you want to do when you see a kid crying?" Caesar stares, watches her cry points, and says, "I get it, boss. You want to put her to work as a beggar and have her ask people for money for you." The protagonist facepalms. "No. I want to know what you want to do, not me. What are your intentions?" Sacker walks up, takes a look, and then just walks away, saying she's insignificant and he doesn't care about her. The protagonist thinks, good, that's better than him wanting to kill her. I'll take it. Then the scene switches to the Real Adventurers Guild. Everyone's talking about how hard it's been to get a good mission lately. They see a huge line, and Sacker says the line is way too long for no reason. But the protagonist tells Caesar to shut up and get in line, and he obeys. The protagonist realizes he's starting to understand how to give Caesar orders without making him suspicious, and there are a bunch of adventurers whispering, "Who's that kid ordering around that huge guy?" Something's off. Caesar has that creepy smile. Finally, it's their turn. The woman asks for a drop of blood on the thing to explain how it works, and says their stats will appear. Caesar hears that and says it's a great idea, then yells for everyone to get ready. The trash in this place is about to witness unforgettable abilities right now. The protagonist is thinking this bastard is drawing attention, and he says, "No way I'm wasting my blood on something that's stupid." Obviously, he was going to dodge it, but he noticed the place had this weird, heavy atmosphere. Maybe everyone's scared of him. Either way, he decides, you know what, fine. I'll just put the blood down, check my stats, and get this over with. Also, I've already worked a lot on my charisma, so maybe something good will come out of it. The poor guy thinks his potential is going to be amazing. He's thinking, well, if I can control Caesar from the start, that's got to give me some extra status. I'm going to get something good. He turns to the woman and says, "All right, let's take a look. What class can I awaken?" She takes a quick look, and the protagonist is kind of surprised. The kid can be a con artist, a cheater, or an armed robber. Caesar stares, his expression changes, and little by little he steps closer. The protagonist thinks that with classes like that, his authority is definitely going to drop, but it makes sense. Everything he did to even get into this game was threaten a civilian, rob a criminal, and then kill the guys from the shop. Clearly, based on what he's done, that was the most obvious outcome. But then Caesar's expression changes again, and he says it totally fits for him to be the boss. The protagonist is staring at the screen, confused, and that's when he sees it suddenly changed, now showing the class's boss, murder orchestrator, and assassin. The protagonist asks the woman why the classes changed out of nowhere. She says that sometimes it happens when he has some kind of lackey or something like that. The effect can take longer to show what he really has. Caesar, in the background, goes, "A boss really does need a good lackey. I'm probably contributing to that." The protagonist tells that bastard to shut up, but Caesar is just celebrating, saying it's exactly what you'd expect from a boss. His classes are cruel. So the protagonist immediately accepts the boss class because it was the least bad. As a boss with the highest authority, he can use charisma to command an organization, and the stronger the members are, the stronger he becomes. Okay, that one's interesting. Still, he doesn't look that excited. Then he asks, "Hey Caesar, what was your occupation?" And Caesar says, "Nothing special, just some random killer." The protagonist thinks, well, at least he got something that actually fits him. Caesar thanks him, saying that's a huge compliment. The protagonist thinks, "That wasn't a compliment, you bastard." Then the scene switches to another little room in the Adventurers Guild, where everyone's looking bruised and miserable. Caesar is sitting there with his legs spread, saying, "You all are a bunch of lucky people." Someone goes, "Thanks, thanks." And the protagonist is like, why is he thanking him? Then Caesar says he's going to give everyone the chance to leave alive today. The protagonist, confused, says, "Caesar, are you insane? Didn't I tell you to respect people when we're outside?" Caesar turns and goes, "Oh boss, you want me to show respect?" The protagonist immediately gets scared of what kind of respect this guy is about to show. But something's off. Why is he acting like this all of a sudden? And right in the middle of the Adventurers Guild, this could cause a huge problem. That's when he sees that the assassin class Caesar makes him stronger the more lives he takes. Meaning, needs to wipe out as many people as possible to power up. The protagonist thinks that bastard really liked that class and is already trying to put it into practice. Now it makes sense why he said those people were lucky and that he'd let them live. A blonde guy who's been waiting there suddenly stands up, shows some coins, and says he's got stuff to do. He needs to deposit money at the bank. Caesar asks how much, and he says it's just 1 silver and 30 copper. Caesar goes, "Well, you put money in the bank to keep it safe, right? So why don't you give it to me and I'll keep it safe for you?" The protagonist realizes he's basically robbing him in broad daylight, but the blonde guy takes off running, yelling, "No. Nobody's stealing his money," until he takes a kunai right in the middle of his back. Caesar says that bastard was trying to protect his money, calling me a bandit. While the guy is writhing around trying to crawl away, the rest of the adventurers are just trying to avoid eye contact. The scene changes to a suburban town where Lena is walking around freezing, wondering where the boss and the knife-crazy guy are. She's sure he must be doing something incredible somewhere. Meanwhile, the protagonist is in a room forcing some idiots to sit there entertaining the two of them like clowns, laughing like lunatics. While Lena is thinking that kid had such dead eyes, like he was bored even when he was staring danger in the face. She starts remembering what Caesar said about some dark organization that was going to end the world. She stops to think. Normally, a situation like that, the one trying to end the world is a demon lord. With that horrible look he had, he clearly wasn't human. If that's the case, she already has an idea of how she can start helping his plans, and she's going to act right now. The scene goes back to the labyrinth city where the protagonist is freezing, and Caesar is saying it's fine. The protagonist thinks, "Of course you're fine, you bastard. You're wearing the clothes I spent a fortune on." He's furious at this jerk and kicks a trash can, saying he should be the one keeping those items. But weirdly, Lena pops out of the trash. Both of them are confused, trying to figure out what she's doing in there. She gives a little awkward laugh with her tongue out and says she messed up. The protagonist immediately wants to know why she's there acting like an idiot and also what happened to the mission about not letting their information leak to the bandits. She makes a completely dumb face and says she's kinda stupid and forgot that little detail. The protagonist is speechless and tells Caesar to put the trash back in the trash. They close the bin, put a huge rock on top, and walk away. While the protagonist says, "Who?" He's feeling a little better. But a while later, she's with them, saying she at least managed to steal a subspace pouch from the guild guys, and she made sure it looked like the boss there got killed by someone else. Except right when she was doing that, the regional manager walked in and caught her in the act. The protagonist asks, "Wait, so not only did you not get rid of the evidence, you're also the main suspect?" And she says, "Yes, exactly." The protagonist thinks, hold on. This makes Lena the one to blame for everything Caesar did. He turns and says, "It was nice having you as a subordinate, Lena. Good luck with your career. Bye." She immediately starts crying, saying the boss is heartless. She's getting cornered as the suspect while she was cleaning up what he did. The protagonist looks at her and thinks he doesn't like seeing women cry, so he pats her head and says, "Well, at least you survived. You could have just taken the subspace pouch for yourself and not gotten blamed. Why didn't you do that? She says she thought about it, and it seemed easier to take money from him than to work. The protagonist realizes this idiot has reasons that make no sense. So he starts walking away, saying that's enough. He doesn't want her as a subordinate. But then they go into an inn, and the protagonist says he wants one room for 2 people and 1 room for 1 person, and the girl's room needs to have a bathtub. The innkeeper says, unfortunately, only a single-person room is available. Lena gets all emotional, saying the boss is even putting a bathtub in her room. Why does he care so much about subordinate number 2? He answers that it's because she smells like hell. She gets embarrassed but thanks him anyway. But obviously he did it because she's a girl. She can't sleep in a room with 2 guys like that. It's also better to keep Caesar at a distance so he doesn't risk losing any charisma points. Then he stops and remembers Caesar already killed someone with a handshake, so maybe it's dangerous to leave that guy alone. But what if he sleeps in the same room as him and Caesar decides to kick him or something and he dies? Honestly, it might be more dangerous to be in the same room as him. So he says, Caesar, take that room. I don't want it. Caesar turns and asks, wait, are you going to kill the owner and take his room? The protagonist thinks this guy is a psychopath, but at least Caesar says, yeah. The boss really is the coldest of them all. But tell me, why are you worried about Lena, the assassin? The protagonist, blushing a little, says, what are you talking about? Caesar replies, she's a defective subordinate who didn't even deal with the criminals guild, and even so, you were merciful and even gave her a bathtub. Looks like you're trying to lower her guard. You're gonna kill her in bed tonight, literally. The protagonist is confused and goes, you're an idiot. I'm just trying to find another room because I don't like sleeping in crowded places. And Lena has other uses. You'll see when the time comes. Caesar just stares, thinking he can't even imagine what the boss is planning. Next scene, the protagonist is waking up saying, no, don't wake me up, I'm the boss. But it's Caesar telling him to get up. The protagonist wants to know why he's there. The sun's already up, and it looks like he didn't even sleep 3 hours. Then he looks to the side and gets confused. Caesar is there with a sword covered in blood, wiping it on the bed sheet. The protagonist asks if he killed someone. Caesar says, of course not. He killed 7 and nobody saw. The protagonist immediately is sure he must have killed Lena in her sleep. This guy really is a psychopath, but somehow that girl always finds a trapdoor and shows up saying good morning, asking if the boss slept well. He doesn't get it, and she says she's there to make sure he always has good nights of sleep and a prosperous future. The protagonist doesn't understand what's going on. He's been awake for 10 seconds, and those 2 are already in his face. And weirdly, both of them seem worried about him. Then he catches himself. There's no way it makes sense for him to see those 2 as companions, so he says, we'd better get out of here now. Back at the Adventurers Guild, there are some people there looking wrecked. Everyone's talking about something that's 3 times harder than the labyrinth. A girl says she's getting more skilled, but those monsters' movements are way too abnormal. Someone agrees, saying who would have thought they'd suffer that much just to kill weak monsters? Then one of them bumps into someone. Guess who? When he looks back, he sees Caesar, who immediately asks what his problem is. Is he trying to act like the boss? Lena looks back too and taps the protagonist's shoulder, saying there's a pervert staring at her body and she just needs permission to kill him right now. Both of them are ready to start a fight. The terrified group runs off in panic, abandoning their friend, while the protagonist's evil reputation goes up. So he says, for the love of God, let's talk. We can't keep wasting time like this every time. Lena, excited, asks, so what, are we finally gonna do something? He says, yeah. We're going to the labyrinth. But since we're beginners, we have to start with beginner missions. Caesar asks if there's a problem with that, while Lena straight up calls the protagonist a beta. He explains they need to finish the starter quests to rebuild their power and unlock harder missions. It's like proving what they can do. Caesar says he gets it, but Lena asks why beginner missions. Caesar snaps at her, saying she really doesn't understand the boss. If they set some ridiculous record, beginners will feel completely crushed. The point is to humiliate everyone. Lena says she gets it. Now they're lowering themselves just to humiliate others, and that's pure evil. The protagonist thinks at least they're on the same page. Whatever. A homicidal human with 20 power on his own, a girl with insane agility plus an inventory pouch. Yeah. With a trio like that, it's obviously not going to be hard to clear beginner stuff. On top of that, they'll make money and get extra loot from drops. So he picks the Goblin Subjugation quest. The protagonist thinks it's interesting. Since experience is split in the party, he'll level up without lifting a finger. It was a perfect plan for a former ranked player like him. Then he tells the group to get ready because they're heading out for their first mission. In the middle of the city, behind a huge gate and massive barriers, is the labyrinth. The whole city revolves around keeping the monsters trapped in there and constantly attacking them so they don't multiply. And there they are at the entrance, where it's full of dead bodies. Caesar laughs and says, "Bunch of idiots died in such a stupid way." The protagonist says maybe, while Caesar says he wonders if it was a giant minotaur, maybe a troll, or a 3-meter ogre. The protagonist tells him to remember they're on a beginner mission. The guild wouldn't send them somewhere with monsters like that. Caesar says that's a shame. He was looking forward to showing his real power. Then Lena points to the side and says there are goblin bandits by the corpses. The two of them just stand there, and the protagonist says, "Alright, here comes the first big fight. Go on, handle it." Caesar starts drawing his sword, saying they can't even cast a shadow in the world of darkness. There go. But Lena rushes in, stabs twice, kills both goblins, and it's over. She asks why he's just standing there telling stories when they're already trying to kill her, saying they're gonna finish her off because she stole his fangs. For the first time, the protagonist actually considers that they really might end up fighting each other, even though they're both his underlings. The good part is that, out of nowhere, a goblin gang shows up from every direction. But honestly, I thought they'd get distracted, except those two are still fighting each other. Lena goes straight at Caesar, and he swings his sword at her. She dodges all flexible-like, but ends up taking out 4 goblins as a bonus. She calls him filthy, throws 3 knives, he dodges, and now it's the creatures behind him that die. They're fighting each other, but it's basically all the goblins around them that keep dying. Meanwhile, the protagonist is there, hidden behind a rock, racking up a ton of experience. The situation was weirdly perfect. A little later, he's all proud, walking around after leveling up. Then he goes, "You two are behaving really well." Since he was looking at Lena, she says the boss is praising her, and she's already trying to start another fight. The protagonist says, "I'm praising both of you. Okay, try cooperating a little too." She says, "Fine." She'll hold back so that murderer can be useful for something. Then the protagonist says, "That's enough. They're wasting energy and burning time over nothing. How are they supposed to adventure deeper into the labyrinth if they keep acting like this?" Lena asks if he's going to help hunt, and without realizing it, he answers of course he is. He's the boss. Then he stops to think like, wait, hold on. That's not what he meant to say. But then Caesar comes over and asks, "Hey boss, you sure you want to hunt these goblins? You think that's going to work out?" Our boy thinks the character sync is at 40% and it's awful. But he says, "Why not? Can't lose morale." Caesar goes, "Alright then. Got it." Now Lena's all excited, celebrating, saying it's the first time she's gonna see the boss fight. She's sure he's gonna impress them with some never-before-seen strength. She points and says there's a goblin right there. The little thing is more dead than alive, coming in all shaky. The protagonist is face to face with this trembling creature thinking, okay, at least I've got this good sword, so whatever, let's do it. The most important thing wasn't killing it. It was the style he showed when he killed it. He charges in thinking if it looks cool, that's enough. But the little elder goblin steps to the side and bonks him on the head with its thing. The protagonist realizes the creature is weirdly fast. He swings again, but the bastard dodges. Lucky for him, the sword is enchanted with a diffusion effect, so the slash reaches a bit farther than the blade itself, and it hits the goblin. Still, the goblin falls on its back, rolls over with its chest bleeding, and runs away. Our boy thinks it'll be humiliating if that old thing escapes. So he throws the sword spinning, except it drops on the ground like a piece of trash. The two of them just watch while the goblin runs off. Our boy decides to pretend nothing happened. He picks up the sword and starts walking, but then Caesar says, "Boss, you went beyond my expectations with this body of yours." Lena, confused, goes, "Wait, beyond expectation? Is the boss really that bad?" Our boy just keeps walking without saying anything while she's trying to figure it out, like, hold on. His body is bad. Is he sick? He doesn't answer and just leaves. Sometime later, they're around a campfire, and the vibe is weird. She keeps looking around, not getting it. Then out of nowhere, she raises her arms and says she's in a growth phase, so she's gonna rest early instead of keeping watch. Caesar, though, calls her by that cutesy nickname again and says the boss is sick. Can't she see he's the one who needs rest? Lena says she's the youngest one there. Caesar doesn't need rest. He can keep watch. Then the protagonist says Caesar is 15 years old. She freaks out, eyes wide, saying no way. He looks like he's in his 30s and totally worn out. Caesar says she's making him laugh. Age doesn't matter when someone's weaker than him. The protagonist says, enough. Lena, use your tracking skills to find the way since you're a bandit, right? But she says, unfortunately, she never learned any of those. He thinks that's weird. Wait, you ignored all the navigation skills from the bandit class? And she says, yes. So what did you learn then? She says she learned to hide, infiltrate, and assassinate. That's it. Nothing else. Caesar is furious while the protagonist thinks they're screwed. How are they supposed to navigate a dungeon with no info? In the end, he's the one who stays on watch, which is weird because he's the boss and he's just standing there. But when he looks back and doesn't see Lena, he realizes the idiot went and hid. Then she pops up right next to him, all smug, saying she felt bad for the kids, so she's gonna teach him something he'll like. A skill transfer event activates. He can learn one of her techniques. The protagonist thinks it's kinda interesting. She's an assassin. He asks, what are you gonna teach me? She says the most important thing she knows. He asks if it's assassinating, and she says that's exactly it. She gives her little knife a lick, appears behind him, and says the secret is being fast and hitting vital points. Then she stabs the wall and tells him to do that 1,000 times. The protagonist is kinda confused, but since the mission is hard to trigger, he starts obeying, doing the attacks while she messes with him. After 1,000 times, he's exhausted, but the transfer fails. Since he only got 3% proficiency, she laughs at him and says one thing she's sure of, the boss is useless at assassinating. Suddenly, Caesar shows up behind them and tells them to look back. Some adventurers are coming. 2 guys turn the corner, see the trio staring, and immediately take off running. The protagonist wants information from them, and a mission to capture them activates. If he doesn't capture them, it'll take forever for the next adventurers to show up, and it's the only way to find the exit. The protagonist just says Caesar, and Caesar answers that he'll go get them now. Boom! He steps out and sprints off while Lena just stands there clapping. She's acting like an idiot, saying the kid is really brave. Looks like he's not even worried. The protagonist says, why would I be worried? It's Caesar. She says, no, you should be worried about us. Isn't Caesar kind of hopeless with directions? So there's no way he'll know how to get back after he finds those guys. The protagonist immediately realizes she's right. If Caesar goes too far, they'll never find him again. So the protagonist tells her to go ahead and locate him, but he decides to go too because she's lost as well. 3 minutes later, the protagonist is on the ground exhausted. Lena, confused, asks if he has that disease, where if you push yourself too hard, your heart explodes. He tells her to relax. He's not going to die. She says, maybe, but now we're screwed. There's nothing we can do. We just have to pray he finds the adventurers. Right then, the system announces that Caesar found them. The protagonist tells her to relax. They don't need to worry. She asks if he's sure they still have to find Caesar either way. The protagonist tells her to relax. Even if Caesar is dumb, the adventurers he captured should be able to lead them to him. She gets all happy, saying they finally have someone in the group who can locate something. But then the protagonist suddenly changes the subject and asks what she wants to do when they get out of there. She doesn't get it. He says her willingness to teach skills is admirable, so he wants to give her something. She gets emotional and says the boss is extremely kind to her because that means he'll have to pay for a lot of food. The protagonist thinks it's weird. Why are the bandits in this city all starving? Inside, he's thinking she must have lived a hard life, which is perfect since food is cheap as hell, and it's way easier to pay his slaves, meaning his henchmen, with food. But then a warning pops up. Caesar killed an adventurer. The protagonist realizes he forgot that little detail. Caesar is going to kill everyone. And right then, Lena points out there are more adventurers, an entire group. The protagonist is furious, staring, while Lena is weirdly excited, and good lord, she's already pulling her dagger, and arrow hits the shield. But they're worried about Lena telling her to get away from that weirdo because he looks dangerous. The protagonist doesn't understand while one of them curses him out, saying he's a horrible bastard taking advantage of a young girl in a dungeon like this. The protagonist still doesn't get why they think that. And the big problem is if Caesar shows up now, these people are all dead. He wonders how Lena's going to act, but she's just laughing at him. Then she clings to him and goes, "Oh, I'm such a fragile girl. This evil guy kidnapped me." He almost gets shot. The archer tells him to let the girl go right now. The protagonist is shaking her, asking if she's having fun, and she's just laughing. More daggers come flying, and Zelia shoves him back, making both of them dodge. The captain says, "Careful. This guy is dodging Holland's daggers. He's got some kind of advanced vision." Holland says, "Jason, do you feel it? I've got this feeling we're getting red. This guy might not be as weak as we think, so we better take this completely seriously and put our lives on the line to face him." Suddenly, the captain gets serious and says, "Carl, I have to tell you that I've loved you since the beginning." She's all flustered, telling him to say the rest if they survive. The protagonist is on the other side thinking, what the hell is this? There's romance and drama happening. Why are they scared of me? They start charging in while Lena asks if she should kill them all. The protagonist doesn't want her to, but at the same time, he doesn't know what he's going to do. Then a notification comes in that Caesar killed another adventurer, and the protagonist got a little XP and leveled up. Right away, he gains the skill Boss Spirit. The protagonist gets kind of excited about this, but his proficiency is 0.2%. A boss with proper dignity demands respect from his lackeys and puts fear into enemies. The protagonist is giving off an aura while Lena says he's got the face of someone who kills 50 a day. The protagonist is confused, thinking, what kind of face am I making? While the adventurers come rushing in, he decides he should start looking in a mirror. But that's for later, because it's time to turn on that boss charisma. He shoots them a look, trying to freeze them with fear, but they're still right in front of him, like it did absolutely nothing. Lena asks what he's doing standing there like a complete idiot. She has to step in front while a guy comes yelling for the disgusting trash to die. Now the protagonist realizes he put himself in a dangerous situation when the guy swings a sword at him, the blade about to hit his neck, but then the guy stops at the last second. The protagonist thinks it worked, but it's because behind him, look who's standing there, Caesar, asking why they brought a toy weapon into the dungeon. The guy trembles, but the next second, he says he'll never back down until Caesar swings and shatters Jason's sword. Weirdly, out of nowhere, Linus sniffs and says she smells blood. She tells the protagonist, I don't think it's his blood, right? So what do you think, boss? Caesar answers right away. Boss, those two guys you told me to follow were cruel adventurers who kill other people. That's why I killed them all and took their weapons. The protagonist hesitates and says he doesn't get it. Wait. If they're adventurers who kill people, why did you kill? Hold on. Let me talk. Why did they run away then? Caesar says, isn't it obvious, boss? When they saw your face like you kill 50 a day, they ran off scared. The protagonist still doesn't get why both of them keep saying that. He turns to the adventurers. You two, I've got a question. He makes a really nasty face and asks, when you look at my face, what do you think? The night guy says, I think we're screwed. Caesar starts walking up with the big sword, saying a miserable bastard is still alive and talking like that. Looking at the boss and saying, you think you're screwed after they spared him was disrespectful. They really should all die now, but the protagonist says, wait, hold on. Trying to save them, he says, your punishment is cleaning the blood off the weapons Caesar brought. The scene cuts to Lena's panel shaking. She's all happy, saying the boss is way too smart. He got all those idiots to work for him, and now her subspace is packed. The protagonist says it's obvious they had to clean everything because you can't take loot you stole from a dungeon when it's covered in blood. It's better if nobody knows where it came from, so it sells for more. But now he wants to know, what's that bandit's name? Is it Holland? The guy in the back goes, yeah, that's me. He's guiding them to the exit, but he warns them. Look, the guards at the gate, they're bandits too. If they inspect what you're carrying, they'll take 10% as their cut. The protagonist thinks taxes are basically robbery even in another world. But he asks, so what happens if I dodge that tax? Caesar says it's easy to dodge if they're dead, and Lena weirdly says she can try using her looks. Like what, girl? The protagonist tells Holland to go first and see what happens. They get to the gate and the guard says, hey, you coming back from the labyrinth? Holland goes, yeah. Could we skip the inspection? We ran into an adventure killer, so we're heading to report it to the guild. The guard stops to think, then says it's fine. It'd be good if they pass the rest of the info to the defense people later. The protagonist finds it kind of odd, but he goes along with it and doesn't say much. And just like that, they start leaving the labyrinth. Then Caesar says, you little bandit, you said it was going to be a big deal, dangerous and all, but it was basically nothing. Lena asks about the 10% thing. Both of them are already sure this guy was lying and just trying to steal 10% from them. So the protagonist says, it's fine, Caesar. We'll just sell the three of them as slaves and get back the money he was going to steal. His friends start cussing him out, saying, no way, and that Holland really was trying to rob them. Right then, Caesar is learning fear induction and activates it together with the protagonist, both of them screaming like lunatics, laughing while both their notoriety goes up. But the others are mostly just confused by the whole unhinged act, and Lena waves goodbye. At least the guild's initial goblin mission is done, and they get 10 gold. The system says his reputation with the Adventurers Guild is improving. And we see the receptionist saying dungeon bandits are always a pain, so it's great they managed to deal with it. Good thing they didn't have to pay the 10% that bandits usually demand. He thinks, okay, now that makes sense. Then she says they still have to pay 10% to the guild. The trio is stunned, like just like that bandit was trying to rob them, this girl is trying to rob them too. He's about to complain, but she goes, hold on. You think that's too much? Then I've got a great solution. How about you put me down as the person selling the items? Then you don't have to pay the fee. And she introduces herself, saying her name is Errol. But obviously this isn't going to end well. The next chapter starts with thunder, a church, and someone talking about how the innocent were tortured and devoured, all because of the lust for a virtuous life. And in the end, they end up ruling everything. The guy throws his arms up, an explosion goes off. Except in this case, Caesar barged into the room and interrupted the guy's cult. They stare each other down, and Caesar asks if he's a priest. The guy asks what he can do for him, and Caesar yells that the boss is sick. Then we go back a few hours earlier at the hotel, with the protagonist saying they're staying somewhere luxurious tonight. Lena celebrates, saying he's the best, praising him, saying it's always good being with him. Meanwhile, the protagonist thinks that as long as he's got these lackeys hyping him up, life is easy. On top of that, the girl at the counter registered it like he sold some other items too, so he'd pay less in fees but still get the full value. He's confused since when is he this lucky, especially when he's ugly as hell. The other girl is just staring and says, yeah, he really is super ugly. He ignores it and says they're not going to just sleep today. They're going to enjoy the day as a reward for yesterday's labyrinth mission. But he has one weird condition for the two of them. Until they leave this place, nobody is allowed to cause trouble. The two of them start blaming each other, with Caesar as always calling the girl a bastard. Poor thing. Then the scene switches to the hotel restaurant a while later. They're toasting and look at Caesar straight up the Witcher. The protagonist drinks too, thinking it's been a long time since he relaxed like this. Then he asks Caesar how much the two of them can drink, and that's when they tell him they're underage, so they can't. What? Lena is 16. Caesar is 15. The protagonist thinks, yeah. He really didn't realize how young they are. He comments that if they're going to keep adventuring in labyrinths, Lena needs to learn some kind of direction navigation skill. But she says, no way. It's the most boring thing in the world. He says, fine. Then he'll just go hunt down some bandit and steal a map. While drinking, he thinks these underlings are a disaster. No matter what he says, they don't listen. But weirdly, Caesar is furious. He slams the table and asks if he didn't just drink a whole cup of beer. More than a sip was basically lethal. The protagonist doesn't get what he's talking about. Lena is all emotional, saying he's so excited to be with them that he drank all that. She hits Caesar and tells him to calm down, but suddenly he bursts out in armor saying he's going to call a priest. So now he's going to call that guy, and I don't even get what's happening. Back to the present. The priest is standing there totally confused. He introduces himself as a priest of the end times known as Luvic. The protagonist is in bed confused and just goes, nice to meet you. But he still doesn't get this end times priest thing. Usually, those guys hide until the endgame, so what is he doing here? He's thinking, so he asks, what's your doctrine? The guy just says it's the fall of the entire world. The protagonist is scared, while Lena looks excited. He's sure this guy is evil at minimum. So he asks how the end times people are going to cure him. The priest says it's easy. Just kill the part of the body carrying the disease, and the rest dies too. The disease in this case, the kid says that's going to be a problem because he drank. But the guy steps closer, saying he won't die that easily. He heard the boy is poisoned by alcohol. The protagonist says it's a misunderstanding. He drank a tiny cup. That's it. His servant caused the mess, but it's late, so the priest can leave. He'll at least compensate him for traveling all the way there. He tosses a coin into the priest's hand, and the priest is still kind of confused. The protagonist asks if he wants more. The guy hesitates and lifts the bag, saying it's the first time he, Lovey, has been rewarded for spreading the notoriety of his church. He's moved by the opportunity, and now he can't leave without giving thanks. He starts chanting about innocents who give their lives to devour my God. The protagonist realizes this guy is at least insane, and Luvic is smiling like a psycho, saying he's going to bring the end times ritual. The pages turn, and he says he calls the servant who reigns over diseases. While the protagonist is in shock, the guy slams his thumb down, thunder outside, but it looks like nothing happens. He's like, what just happened? Caesar is furious, calling him useless, saying his special did nothing. Then he tells them to look out the window. And when they look outside, there's a dead guy lying out there in the street. The protagonist asks the priest, why does that person look like they're about to die? Then Luvik gets wrapped in a black aura, throws himself out the window, jumps off the building, lands in the street, grabs his book, checks the guy's pulse, and says the guy is definitely dead. The people around are confused, and the protagonist realizes it. This lunatic cast a spell in the room and killed some random citizen out on the street. Caesar tells him to move, jumps out the window too, lands in the street, and calls out to the guy saying he's not as skilled as he is loud, and he still didn't cure the boy. Then he points a huge sword, bigger than the priest, warning him that this ritual better do something. Luvik says what he cast reduces a person's vitality until the disease dies, but Caesar is furious because whatever he did drew a ton of attention, and the boss said they were supposed to keep a low profile today. The protagonist, on the other hand, is terrified of this reduced vitality thing. Then Luvik asks if that sword pointed at him is meant to threaten his clan. Caesar says it's not a threat. He doesn't care about incompetence, and it looks like Luvik is going to pay the price, while the protagonist yells at them not to start fighting now. The moment Caesar swings, the priest disappears. Caesar tries to strike him from behind, but the priest blocks it, and he says holy power absorbs damage proportional to the strength God granted him. The protagonist is stunned. This guy is actually blocking Caesar's attacks, and the system says he has entered a fight to the death with the priest Luvik. Slash here slash there. The priest keeps dodging. Another sword strike blows up the ground. Smoke rises, but the priest disappears again. Then some Kaneki-style tentacles show up and hit Caesar from behind. Seriously, because I said it, it's exactly like that. The priest is going full Kaneki, attacking, saying now Caesar will learn the speed of the shadow spear, or rather, shadow spears, while Caesar spins, whipping his cloak around to block. The protagonist is shocked. Caesar is defending the other guy's attacks with the wind from his cloak. Caesar charges again, face to face with the priest, who blocks again like it's nothing. For a second, the protagonist thinks the priest got weaker, but then there's another Kaneki thing coming out of his back. The protagonist panics that Caesar might take one to the chest and die, which would basically be game over for him. Something tore. I don't know what, but let's go to the next chapter. Right when the priest attacks with the thing coming out of his back, while the protagonist wonders how they're going to stop him, the protagonist suddenly yells that the guards are here. The priest turns, and it looks like he managed to pierce Caesar. No. Actually, he distracted him for a second, and the hit landed on the side of his arm. Caesar laughs, raises his arm, and slams a heavy strike into the guy's chest, blasting him into the ground. So yeah, this was serious. For a second, I thought this priest was going to join the protagonist's team. Caesar is yelling that he killed that damn priest while the whole city is confused. Then he notices the police arriving. People were damaging public property, fighting in the middle of the city, and a woman nearby is already shouting that this guy came jumping down from the floor where that kid is. And just like that, Caesar gets arrested. Lena asks what they're going to do. Cedric is done for, and there's no way she can take the protagonist with her. He just thinks they need to get out of there anywhere. But it doesn't work out because now they're at the police station with the officer saying that Will doesn't have any criminal record, but it looks like he's the one who commands Caesar. It's hard to believe, but the kid has no record of criminal activity. Then the cop says you're going to have to explain why. Besides the end times priest, there was also a civilian electrocuted in the middle of the street. He definitely got dragged into your fight, didn't he? The protagonist sighs and says it might not look like it, but he has an illness. Here we go. He says Caesar brought the priest to cure him without knowing he was an end times priest. They followed the guy and did everything he asked. But when that guy cast a spell aimed at him, it ended up getting redirected. The cop says the story doesn't add up. He thinks it's way more likely the protagonist was trying to recruit that evil priest to his side. The protagonist thinks that story honestly makes more sense, especially since Lena is already behind bars too, and she's also considered dangerous. She's crying, asking how they're supposed to build the Demon King's army while they're locked up. While he's thinking, the cop looks excited. This kid's losing his nerve. He'll confess any second now. Kid, I'm gonna bring in a witness who will definitely prove your guilt. Come in, Miss Errol. What a snake. The protagonist is like, what the hell? While she says, it's good to see him again. Even the cop is shocked they know each other while she's standing there with that half-lidded look. Oh uffa. She let our boy off, said it was a shame, but she thinks she got everything completely wrong. The protagonist still doesn't get what's going on. She goes, hold up. Weren't you the one who said you had information about the guy who got involved with that priest? He says yes. But then she points out that the young man standing in front of her is a respectable adventurer who captured the Labyrinth killers. So it's pretty unlikely he's the guy mixed up in that priest business or anything shady like that. She puts on this threatening face that honestly looks more like she's messing with him, saying that from the looks of it, he won't want to file this case since it could hurt his performance in the police. The guy stops to think and realizes that if he's going to lose this, it's better not to push it. Meanwhile, the protagonist is hyped thinking he got lucky. And just like that, it seems to have worked. Every accusation against him gets dropped. He's thinking, this time I really got lucky, and that telling them all that was actually a good move. Errol says she never imagined something like this would happen to him when he barely even joined the Adventurers Guild. Good thing she managed help. He says he owes her, and she makes another mischievous face, a little more evil this time, saying it looks like he's going to become an exclusive member then. Then she leaves, saying it's all settled, while Lin is sure something bad is waiting for them. The protagonist, though, says he's more worried about the fact he didn't sleep at all, and now he's dying of sleepiness. Then out of nowhere, Caesar looks at him and says it's time for him to get some serious treatment. Even the protagonist is confused, trying to figure out what this idiot is talking about. Okay. Scene cuts to the healing, and I still don't get why they're so worried about him having had a little beer. The priest is there casting healing and saying it's not working for some reason. The protagonist answers that it's supposed to work based on the amount of divine power used, and the priest wonders if maybe it's the kind of curse a junior priest like him has no chance of removing. The protagonist is thinking, I'm screwed now. A few minutes earlier, when he pretended he was still sick so he could go sleep, Caesar said no way and dragged him to get healed. And now he's there with the priest struggling to cure him, even though he basically has nothing. While the priest hesitates, Caesar asks what he means they can't heal him. The priest tries to explain they just need a little more time, but Caesar grabs him and says he's full of excuses. He better understand that what happened to that priest in the street was their doing. The protagonist is thinking that's really not the kind of thing you should say out loud. Then suddenly, someone asks if the patient's curse can't be identified. Caesar turns to ask who it is, but the person just tells him to move aside. The protagonist looks over, and whoever it is says that with a face that ugly, yeah, he's cursed, has to be. He raises his hand, and the blonde guy starts casting something, but he also looks freaked out. His hand is shaking, and he's asking how that's even possible. His name is Elaine. A man named Elaine? Apparently. Yes. And he's an intermediate priest, and he thinks it's strange. The curse their boss has, he couldn't even sense it. They'll probably need a priest above his level. The lackeys are scared he's going to die. While the protagonist is thinking these idiots could just realize already that he's fine. If he admits now that he was faking, it'll destroy his image with the lackeys, and they won't respect him. Elaine is already running out saying he's going to call the Grandmaster until the protagonist says, Hey. Wait, Elaine. Let me ask you something. Just the two of us. It's about my illness. Now in Elaine's bookstore, Elaine tells him to talk. What is it? So the protagonist says, Sir Elaine, I don't want this curse of mine to involve the Grandmaster. Elaine asks why this is his best chance to be cured. If it's about the cost, he'll even help cover it. But the protagonist wonders, what if they fail to cure him? Elaine must know how notorious his lackeys are. Not even Bram's guards would be able to do anything. Nobody can control them, meaning if they fail, everyone there dies. Elaine says it's heartbreaking to think the person who has to take care of those crazy lackeys is someone whose appearance has been completely corrupted by a curse. And while the priest gets emotional saying he's never seen someone sacrifice so much, they were completely destroyed by a curse. This was the true spirit of self-sacrifice. The protagonist is basically crying inside thinking, I give up. What am I supposed to do to convince someone like this? Then he goes, Look, I already explained everything. I'm leaving. But Elaine says, Wait. I can give you a buff to slow down your curse and see if you recover a bit. And then the protagonist starts getting energized by that light. Suddenly, all his conditions and problems really do get cured. The protagonist says, All right, I'm leaving, and thanks him, but Elaine tells him to wait again. As a priest who saw the kid working so hard, he's now motivated to join his group. The protagonist doesn't really get it. Elaine says he doesn't need money. He'll accept any mission. He just wants to help. Before the protagonist can refuse, it's too late. The system says an intermediate priest has joined the party. The good part is that thanks to special conditions, you can use him without paying any kind of medical fee or anything like that. The protagonist is in shock that something like that is even possible, but he's starting to get worried. Since the start of the game, he's been getting this weird kind of luck. Maybe this is the power of the charisma stat, another person working for him for free. Normally, to hire a mid-level priest, you need a really strong group, and you still have to pay a lot. He's staring at the excited priest, and then Caesar asks, You're not going to say anything? You're not happy? Will is thinking it must have something to do with what he achieved in the other game. Something's off. Elaine asks if the protagonist is doubting his abilities. Meanwhile, the protagonist is sure someone is manipulating all of this, and if he levels up with this much help, they'll take away his credit. So he says, "Listen, priest, on my team, your life is the collateral. If you join my group, you're going to end up dying." Scene cuts to people asking Elaine what happened, why he's shaking. He's about to say something while Lena asks the protagonist what happened. His face even looks a little better. Meanwhile, inside, Elaine is crying, saying that guy is incredible. They needed to join the church and all pray for him. He thinks the protagonist stopped him from joining because he was afraid Elaine would die on dangerous adventures. But then the scene jumps to an hour later at a restaurant where the protagonist is still there, glowing and shining. He doesn't look very happy, though. Lena says his skin is glowing, but his face is still the same as always. Caesar agrees he doesn't get why he's mad. The protagonist says he's not going to blame anyone, but they have to admit that every mission they take always goes wrong and turns into a mess. The two of them start getting angry, one blaming the other, and the protagonist tells them to stop. What matters now is finding a solution, and his solution is the bargaining skill. The system says it lets you create something out of nothing. It was the most important skill. The higher your talent with it, the more you can bargain. Lena says it's shameful. Bargaining is a dirty skill. He says she doesn't understand the value of things and tells her to watch. He calls the owner, who comes over staring and asking what he wants. How can he help the kid? The protagonist says, "Take a look at the food I ordered." The owner looks, "Yeah. You ordered a lot. So what?" Then the protagonist says, "Well, I'm guessing this added some nice sales for you. Right?" Then he activates bargaining and says, "So how about we get something out of that?" The lackeys look kind of nervous while the bald guy stares, and he says, "Sure, that makes sense. They can get some free drinks." He yells for drinks to table 4 while the protagonist says they're learning how to get things without violence. Right away, Caesar slams the table and says he gets it. Looks like you can get whatever you want using bargaining. Then he calls the bar owner and says he must have felt it, right? What the kid here really wants. Will doesn't really understand what Caesar is thinking now. The owner pauses for a few seconds, turns, and warns, "If you cause a scene in here, I'm calling the guards." But Caesar says, "Are you crazy? We went to the police today after we destroyed the whole city, and we still walked out free." The protagonist is thinking, once again, Caesar is running his mouth. Then the owner says, "It's weird." He turns to the protagonist and asks if there's some kind of up-and-coming criminal organization he doesn't know about. If that's the case, he must have come here knowing how important this place is. Right then, trapdoor opens. There are trapdoors in every house in this city, and a gang climbs down. The owner says he likes it when customers show their true intentions. Caesar is excited, saying bargaining really works. He wanted a fight, he got one, and he charges in. The first slash goes in, and the gang tries to challenge him, but they're all terrified. The system warns they're in an unexpected gangster area, a criminal gang secretly operating a restaurant. Caesar is wrecking everything. The boss is slipping off to the side, confused because half his men are gone in one attack. He orders everyone to spread out, but he still hasn't noticed Lena behind him, asking when he's going to pay attention to a beautiful girl like her. And apparently they've got history because she licks her sword and asks if he remembers her. A few seconds later, the boss is shaking, apologizing, saying the situation makes no sense, but yeah, he really messed up by not bargaining. He doesn't even know what to say. The protagonist is standing there with that awful face while the boss, terrified, wants to know what kind of person he is. But Will says, "It's too late to regret it now. Don't you recognize my subordinate here?" The boss says, "Of course. She was a high-level fighter in their organization. One day, she destroyed one of their units all by herself, and since then, she was never seen again. Now every criminal in the city is looking for her and her group to kill them." Lena is kind of happy to be that well known, while the protagonist wants to know when that even happened. They're being hunted by the police and apparently by criminals too, which is terrible because it means they can't rely on anyone. But there's no going back now either. Since it's come to this, he stands up and asks, "So you're telling me my subordinate is wanted across the whole city? You better tell me who's looking for her. If nobody here opens their mouth, nobody's leaving alive today to tell the story." The boss thinks the kid is cruel. He'll kill everyone just because of that. And the protagonist pretends he's leaving, telling Lena to kill everyone quickly. Then the boss begs him to wait and says he can tell him everything. The protagonist warns that lies won't work on him, so the boss reveals that the whole bandit organization is a mess. Lena asks what happened while she was gone, and the boss says the identity of the big criminal guild has basically been disappearing. And it seems like it's all because of a kid who just joined the group. He's kind of weird, but he's smart and he's been taking over just by talking. How so? He won over the executives and even changed the business model. Since then, the bars he used to run have all been going under, and he can't make money anymore. The only thing he knows is that, according to rumors, the kid used to be a street punk. And anyway, the boss says he can see infinite potential in the protagonist's organization, overwhelming power to wipe out an entire place, and the terrifying charisma of a real boss. If he became, for example, the master of these shops, he could build a reputation that would surpass everyone else's. Lena smacks him on the bald head, telling him to shut up, saying the boss is the one who decides. But the protagonist tells her to wait, and he says he might actually consider the owner's offer since he's tired of the bandit guild. And if the owner wants to hand this whole place over to him, he'll take it. Lena is furious, telling him not to forget this is a criminal organization. Once they get the chance, they'll betray him and he'll be left behind. But the protagonist tells her to relax because the day anyone tries to betray him, they'll be killed on the spot. Besides, they were going to die anyway, so this is the only option they've got. If they want to stay alive longer, they'd better swear loyalty to Will. At that moment, he activates the boss's spirit there. Everyone's hesitating, and out of nowhere, it feels like the event just ended. Now the criminal organization that ran that restaurant swears loyalty to him, and the restaurant becomes the kid's territory. The old guy even goes over and kisses the kid's boot. The system notifies him that he now has territory, a gangster base, and underlings. He's got everything he needs to build an organization. So the protagonist says that from now on, their group's name is Black Mountain. Forming an organization was a key event for someone in the boss class. And, of course, Caesar immediately wants to know what the plan is going forward. Honestly, I thought the protagonist was about to take over the whole city, but he says their first goal is to clear the labyrinth. Lena says that's kind of a normal goal, right, for a criminal organization. The protagonist says power and wealth matter. Sure, but that's only a small part of what he wants. What he's really interested in is the powerful monsters in the labyrinth. He can feel a kind of strength and item rarity that's totally different from anything in this city. Instead of dominating insignificant things like the people here, he wants to subjugate those beings. The trio is walking along all fired up, while the others are standing there confused. Then the scene switches to the East District in one of the alleys, where that kid from the beginning is reading about the restaurant that got taken over in a single day. He says it was someone from a big up-and-coming organization standing next to some huge guy. That bargain bin Caesar-looking guy is named Mr. Toma, where this kid even found him. Who knows? Next chapter. The protagonist says he doesn't care about the labyrinth's rules or the nation's rules. If they're going to become the best, they'll push through all of it with their own hands. The system says the player Will has decided his team's objectives. And since he conquered that bandit-filled bar, those guys' notoriety got added to his organization. The owner is sitting there completely wrecked, while the blonde guy tells him to cheer up. They survived the crisis. The bald guy turns and says, yeah, they survived, but the news must have reached that kid. And now he's heard the bastard has a monstrous bodyguard. Then a police officer shows up, calling out to the kid and asking if he hasn't heard it's illegal to carry giant weapons around here. The kid asks why, and the cop, remembering the mess the protagonist caused, says it's because lately some people have been causing a lot of chaos in the city, and everyone describes the person as someone carrying a huge sword, which obviously fits this kid. The kid just listens while the cop says it's all precaution. It's a shame, but they'll have to confiscate the big sword. But, weirdly, this Toma guy is even worse than Caesar and decides to attack the cop out of nowhere. Back with the protagonist, the system says Black Mountain's guild notoriety has already passed 1,000. The good and bad part is that everything the members do will affect those values. The protagonist is walking through the city, kind of thrown off. Ever since he got that place, people have been staring at him from every direction. It's weird, but also not that bad, because if he's drawing attention, he won't be short on chances to make money. And strangely, his subordinates seem to love the fame, even if it's negative. But the kid's all over the place. At the same time, he's excited. He's also furious because he can't relax. If he does, he'll fail again, like he failed back in version 1 of Rodrigo Elrigo's game. So he tells the two of them that even if they end up in hell, they're going to crush the labyrinth, and the only way they won't die is if a miracle happens. That's why he asks if they're ready to make a miracle happen. They shut him down immediately and say no. Lena tells him to calm down. He's getting carried away just because he got the boss title. Caesar agrees, saying the game's only just started, boss. Let's focus on the initial objectives first. The protagonist thinks he can't figure out what these two are about. But in the middle of that, he suddenly gets an intruder alert, and the only place he owns is the restaurant. Seriously, he barely got the place, and it's already completely wrecked. And, of course, it's that kid saying it was obvious they'd come take back what belongs to them. The big bald guy asks if they're leaving already. They seem in a hurry. Is he scared of what the bald guy did and acting against the organization? The kid says yes. He got kicked out and he's here because he wants to be. The bald guy laughs and says he's smart. But at the end of the day, he's still a kid because they just attacked the property of a brand new organization. He has no idea what kind of person is behind this place now. In a way, they're kind of similar walking around with a monster at their side, but that person is definitely more dangerous. The kid looks furious, and the bald guy asks if he's feeling inferior. The kid orders Toma to attack and immediately pulls his sword, but he's crying while he attacks. He goes in for the strike, but then Caesar shows up. Explosion. And just like that, he disarms him. Thomas looks terrified. I thought he'd go head-to-head, but now everyone's panicking. Caesar glares at them, asking how they even had the nerve to invade the main base. Like, there's another one. The kid is literally shaking. It's that guy from the beginning, the one who says he knew it would be the same bastards who stole all his money. Caesar says he has no idea what he's talking about, but why is there a kid here? While the other guy already has blood on his hands, the kid asks how they don't remember him. He'll never forget the day he got tied to a sword. Then Caesar talks and says, now he remembers. The first person in this world who had the guts to steal money from the boss. Right then, the protagonist comes in with Lena and she says the kid showed up to cause trouble. But Thomas starts working up his courage. The protagonist tells Caesar to be careful. The attack is coming straight to the chest and then he gets shoved and blasted into the wall. Stone flies everywhere and Caesar drops wrecked on the ground outside. Thomas comes in with that crying face while the other two are in shock. The kid tells the protagonist to say what he thinks now. His indestructible lackey just got destroyed, but the protagonist gets serious and says he's going to pay for what he did to their organization's base. He tries to go in, but Lena holds him back, telling him to calm down too. It's just a kid in front of him. Will says he's never letting the kid who's killing Caesar walk away alive. The kid replies that Caesar's finished. He has no idea how powerful Mr. Toma is, someone who's already traveled the depths of the labyrinth. He lost all his comrades and reached the edge of the abyss. But then a strange woman approached, and not long after, he came out as the only survivor, and the guilt of abandoning everyone he loved still eats at him. He's crying, telling Caesar to get up, saying if Caesar doesn't do anything, Caesar's comrades are the ones who'll die today by his hand. But Caesar stays silent. The kid says he lost his chance to become a great bandit, but life gave him a new opportunity. One day he met Toma, and the protagonist suddenly goes, enough, kid. And the two of them are half asleep, saying his story's gotten way too long. The kid yells that the summary is simple. It's over. Caesar is dead. Then the protagonist says, it looks like he's the one who doesn't understand what happens to people who mess with his group. Lena steps forward and says the kid's lackey might be strong, but right now he has nobody on his side. She says she'll cut him in half. Meanwhile, the protagonist is thinking he can't have an organization that goes around beheading kids. But then Lena is shocked when Toma comes charging in, crying, screaming straight at her. His hand goes right into her face. He covers her face while the kid celebrates, but when he looks back, he freezes because Caesar grabbed his leg, saying in a fight, you never drop your guard. He spins him and slams him into the wall, and he says it doesn't matter what happened to Thomas's comrades in the past. He'd better pick up his sword now and get ready for a real one-on-one, just the two of them. The system notifies the protagonist that Caesar really wants the duel, while the protagonist is holding Lena, not understanding why Caesar is calling for a one-on-one when they have the advantage. Of course, Tammy accepts, and the unexpected event begins. Tama, weighed down by the guilt of abandoning his friends, was projecting his fear onto Caesar, the threat right in front of him. And in that moment, he believed that if he defeated Caesar, he'd finally be free of the guilt that's been following him. The protagonist doesn't get why the story suddenly revolves around Toma when he doesn't even know who this guy is. But Caesar smiles, and Toma rushes in with the first attack. The protagonist watches from the back. Just the two of them fighting is wrecking the entire place. He asks if Lena can jump in and help to make sure Caesar wins, but she says she's an assassin. If she jumps into a fight that's already underway, she has no advantage and won't be any help. They keep trading blows, then, honestly, an aura of flames appears behind Toma, and he manages to slip an attack under Caesar, driving his arm upward. The protagonist is impressed. This guy is actually putting pressure on Caesar. The hit is so strong that Caesar is floating in the middle of the room. Then the system gives a danger warning because Toma is about to use a lethal attack, and it looks like the slash lands right in Caesar's chest, blasting him into the wall again. The protagonist calls out to him while the kid looks from under the table and says he'd better see what happens to anyone who challenges him. He said his lackey would die today. With the damage to the wall, he's finished. Thomas turns to the group and says now it's their turn. Now the kid is getting worried because his lackey is out of control, and if he kills everyone, it could go bad for him inside the organization. The protagonist tells Lena to do something, and she looks excited, saying good. Now that she has no choice, she'll try. She activates an illusion skill, and Thomas sees Lena surrounding him from every direction. She's jumping side to side, saying he won't be able to track her with the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, she's at his neck, saying she'll land a clean strike on a vital point, but a sword comes spinning in and hits between them. Lena gets thrown to the ground, and when Tama looks to the side, someone's stepping out from the wall telling that bastard not to get involved. The Caesar, saying this fight is his. He shoots forward like an arrow, hand to hand, a straight honest fight against Tama, who keeps applying pressure while asking why Caesar is so obsessed with old allies. Did he betray them somehow at the crucial moment? Did that mess him up mentally? But Caesar says he's an idiot for caring about something as insignificant as allies. He's living proof. He's alive and all his friends are dead. If Tamer really went all the way to the end of the labyrinth, he should have learned that in this world, the weak have no use. The protagonist is standing there, not really understanding what he means. Lena, off to the left, even asks if that doesn't fit him perfectly. Caesar keeps pushing, saying all weak people deserve death, just like Tima's friends deserve to die in the first place, since Tima was useless, and Caesar is really shaking him. Tima starts having flashbacks, seeing the mage trying to protect herself, begging him to survive. Then a burst of black energy explodes from his head, spreading outward while the kid screams for Mr. Tomo, and the system says his rage has exceeded the limit of what can be handled. The protagonist thinks they're screwed now. This kind of event usually happens later in the game when you face berserk-level creatures. But Caesar, probably without meaning to because he has all the strength from the points he spent, forced the event way earlier. Caesar is still telling Toma he's a worthless nobody, someone who still hasn't learned the real lesson. The reason he got defeated like a complete idiot is because his group didn't have a boss. The protagonist doesn't get it, and Caesar says comrades are equals, and that kind of relationship weakens in a crisis. But if Toma wants to endure any crisis and be strong enough, he needs a boss, someone he'd give everything for, someone who would make him break past every limit. You can abandon a comrade, but you can never abandon a boss. The protagonist is left wondering whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. While Toma keeps pushing deeper into that overload, he suddenly drops to the ground and looks dead. I don't know. The system says he won the one-on-one event, and because of that, Caesar's strength shot up like crazy, and he gained the tenacity status. Lena's over there celebrating while the kid has no idea what's going on. The protagonist, on the other hand, thinks the reward was way too small. Normally, when you beat a monster like that, you're supposed to get something way better. And now the kid standing face to face with Caesar is shaking all over. The poor guy is spitting blood while the protagonist stops and thinks he really does have the most capable subordinates. Then Lena tells him to look ahead. Caesar had collapsed on the ground, knocked out. The scene switches to one of Caesar's nightmares. He's walking through a cave saying he beat them again. But Will asks what he means. Beat them? How can he call it a victory with a gash across the middle of his chest? What he did was nothing but a mess. A real victory has to be perfect. The way he fought today didn't match the standards of the Black Mountain Association. Caesar tells him to explain, and the protagonist says that's exactly what he heard. He's disqualified. Thunder crashes, and Caesar says he understands. This has to be a dream because he's sure the boss would never test his loyalty like that. The protagonist is watching. Caesar lunges at him, and then he suddenly opens his eyes lying in a hospital bed. It's weird how sometimes they're in a medieval world, and then out of nowhere it's like a super modern hospital. Caesar looks to the side and sees a note from the protagonist telling him to meet in the city once he recovers, but he crumples the paper in angry embarrassment. In one of the city's main buildings, the protagonist is asking if Toma really had that much money. The woman says yes. They were going through everything he'd acquired, and they got lucky since they were the ones who defeated him. The truth is he'd been causing trouble for everyone in the city since he was running that crime syndicate together with that kid who apparently was interested in his wealth. The protagonist immediately says the kid was only with Toma to steal his money. But then the woman says he's only getting half of Toma's cash, and he asks why only half. The pretty woman says it's half because the other half is going to the kid. The protagonist says no way. He's gonna kill the kid right now and take half of the kid's reward too. But the boy starts crying, saying it's fine. he can become the protagonist's slave, and that seems to give the protagonist an idea. Next chapter, we're on the east side of the city at Thomas's so-called mansion. The protagonist says the woman told him the guy was rich, but all he has is this desolate place. He tells Rave to explain what's going on. "You little thug." The kid says his name isn't Rave until the protagonist tells him to shut up. From now on, he's a slave, and he'll name his slave whatever he wants. Then the branch woman glances to the side and sees a teddy bear skewered on a spike. They're confused. Why is something like that in this mansion? Rave says Toma, let's just say, had a few psychological issues. They keep walking around trying to find something valuable, but it's clearly all worthless. The protagonist thinks it's nice to get land this big, but it doesn't matter because the mansion is useless. Suddenly, the branch woman asks if they shouldn't just demolish everything. The protagonist thinks about it and figures that's obviously the best move. They tear it all down, then build a ridiculous castle for the Black Mountain Association. Considering they're bandits, money isn't hard to get. While he's planning, the woman is telling Lena that her boss is really ugly. The protagonist is just eager for Caesar to come back so they can make even more money. For gaining the land, the system congratulates him for securing a new hideout. The scene switches to the city center where Caesar is pacing around waiting for the protagonist to show up until someone comes up and calls out to the big guy with the sword on his back. Caesar asks who he is, and the guy, all excited, says he's the one who has the body that never dies. He saw Caesar with that sword on his back and wants to know if he heard about the duel between two longsword users in the alleys. Caesar asks what about it, and the guy says he thinks everyone in the city is wrong for calling it a legendary duel. It was garbage. Two filthy people who don't know anything about martial arts, efficient and flexible strikes that control the flow of a fight. The only martial art that would produce something like that is called bike bow. So how about Caesar? One of the famous longsword users tries out that technique. It's a golden opportunity. If he registers at the dojo, he can receive lots of rewards. Strangely, Caesar says, sure. He needs time to pass anyway, so he'll learn it. Back at the protagonist's new hideout, Rev just swung his sword 1,000 times into a wall and managed to acquire the skill. Line appraises him and then roasts the protagonist, saying even the kid is better than the boss. The girl standing nearby wants to know where his super competent subordinate is. It's past her shift time. The protagonist is confused. Caesar isn't the type to ignore the boss's orders. So where is he? Then he turns to her and says he has a question. Ever since he arrived in this city, a lot of things haven't made sense. A lot has gone his way since he got here with Caesar, and he has the feeling the city's people are doing something like how she's here, for example, outside her working hours trying to help him. The woman laughs and says he really is sharp. No wonder he's the boss of that organization everyone talks about, but she's not here on duty. She didn't leave because of personal feelings. The two in the back freak out. The protagonist is stunned, wondering what this woman is even talking about. The next chapter starts talking about the era of the Great Templars, the 5th generation of VR, and a game that cranked the difficulty way up. Because of that, items became much more important. And they became so important that getting one made players ridiculously happy, but it created an unfair economy. Even if you were a much lower level, you could solo stronger players just by using stolen items. The poor players who suffered every day because they didn't have a good sword started training. And that's how the martial arts system was formed. In theory, it sounded like a great plan, but the guy is looking at the ground and seeing someone with their head pinned down. It's Caesar, showing up to ruin everyone's day, saying the guy held out for a bit, so this must be that martial art. The leader tells him to calm down for a second, saying he's there to train. Immediately, Caesar calls the master out to fight, and the poor man is in shock. Caesar puts a hand on his shoulder and says this place is already getting boring, so they should bring out the best fighter here since everyone's scared. Otherwise, everyone's lives and whatever this place stands for ends right there. Everyone is stunned until someone tells everybody to shut up and stomps down hard. A bald guy wants to know who has the nerve to cause trouble in this dojo. The guy stands there with his arms crossed, and Caesar immediately thinks that must be the strongest one and charges straight at him. He gets in his face and asks if it's him or not, the one who's going to defend this place. They stare each other down. The bald guy looks at Caesar and starts crying, saying the guy doesn't back off even with a glare. His friends rush to help while Caesar is confused. This place is trash. He says he came in with expectations, but they've only disappointed him. Looks like they wasted his time telling him to come here, so now they're going to pay. Everyone in this dojo is getting beaten down. Everybody's shaking. Suddenly, one guy trembles and throws his dojo plaque on the ground. The master asks what he's doing. He's an honorary member, but the guy is crying, saying it's impossible to win in life just by working hard, and tells the boss to look at that monster status window. The guy is 15 years old, still level 15. He's an amateur, but with that insane set of items, there's no way they have any chance. He must have spent at least $1 billion. Another guy starts shaking and says there's something even worse. Caesar is marked as a minion, meaning he belongs to another player. He's sure it must be some cruel person who unleashed this gigantic monster in the city to kill everyone. The protagonist is scratching his ears thinking, what are they saying about him? And the people in the dojo are trembling, saying they don't want to die in some stupid way. The boss realizes it's serious. Everyone is starting to panic. That creature had a terrifying aura. Who was its master? Caesar grabs one of them by the collar and asks why they're so desperate. Then he suddenly slaps him in the face. He dies, and the monster keeps talking, saying effort and hard work will never reach natural talent. That's as natural as the world existing. Trying to run from nature's logic is like trying to escape who you are. He turns to everyone and says the most natural thing is for them to fight him and for everyone to die. Now the boss is wondering why he brought this guy here, and suddenly all the students start throwing their emblems on the ground saying they never want to practice martial arts again. They all run to leave until an old man tells everyone to stop and warns that nobody touches his boys. Caesar looks back, the guy's eyes are shining. Then the scene cuts back to Lena, telling the protagonist to get away from that woman right when he was all fired up, wanting to know what she meant by that interest thing. And the purple-haired girl is wondering what she did. Then Lena charges in. She challenges her and demands to know what she thinks she's doing. She's seriously suspicious. Was she trying to steal the boss just because her chest is bigger? The protagonist has no idea how Lena even got to that conclusion. Lena tells her to say it already. What is she doing there? Clearly wants to extort the boss somehow. She's about to attack, but the protagonist tells her to stop right now. That woman works for the government. They'll get into huge trouble. But Lena takes it as well being worried about her and immediately asks if he's choosing her or choosing this new woman. Will still doesn't understand what kind of situation they've thrown him into. In the game, there's supposed to be some kind of rivalry and negotiation with that woman, but instead, she came here saying she had an interest in him. And for a second, that actually made him kind of interested in her. But he needs to remember the focus. It's time to activate charisma. Lena tells him to stop being ugly while the protagonist wonders what he's supposed to do here. He wants to say he chooses one, but at the same time he's looking at two amazing women from his point of view, and he can't decide. Back to the fight with Caesar, the old man says not to touch any of his students. Caesar turns and then the instructor shows up. Master, what are you doing? From the back, he says, even if Caesar is very strong, he came here and caused all this chaos. What is he planning? This was the gym's master called Gato. The guy is spreading bad vibes everywhere, shoving people around, and Caesar asks what he means by plan. Apparently, he didn't realize Caesar is here for exactly that. He stomps down and starts destroying the whole place, smiling like a maniac, saying it's always good to beat up the weak. But the master starts doing these green palm movements side to side, sets his feet, takes a stance, saying Caesar went too far and won't be forgiven. Then he fires off a palm blast, 2 slashes aimed at Caesar, and Caesar immediately remembers Will in that vision, saying his victory was shameful. A true competitor's victory is graceful and flawless. The attack seems to explode in the middle of the room, and the boss is coughing, trying to figure out what happened. But, of course, when the smoke clears, Caesar is standing there untouched. He used one of the guy's students as a shield while saying victory has to be perfect. The boss tells him to let the student go while Caesar can only think about it, the perfect victory where he doesn't get hurt. Gato goes to help the student, begging him to wake up and not die. Then he turns back and demands to know why Caesar came there, where he's from. He needs to say his name and his group. So Caesar says, Caesar from the Black Mountain Association. Gato flinches and says it's the first time he's ever heard of that group. It's probably just another cult of thugs and demons that invaded the city and started attacking training spots for no reason. Caesar, though, just tells the sick old guy to shut up because this has nothing to do with him. Then Caesar turns around, but Gato's basically asking to get beaten because he tells him to stay right there and says the fight isn't over. Caesar says he only accepts perfect victories, and any fight against someone as weak as Gato would already be imperfect. He's not interested in wasting his time there anymore. That was the ultimate disrespect. The boss is shaking all over, but he at least works up the nerve and asks if that means Caesar is leaving. And Caesar goes, no. When did I ever say that? Everyone's like, what do you mean? You literally said it 2 seconds ago.
César explains, no.
From now on, he's the owner of this place. That's what he meant. Gato, poor guy, tries to resist, saying it'll only happen over his dead body. Then he sends every single member of the academy to attack. Meanwhile, over at Toma's residence, Lena is furious, saying the boss clearly has way too big of a heart. He says he's really grateful to have someone as nice as her around. But the system window is basically just sitting there like she wants to kill him. Then she starts chewing him out, asking why he acted like an idiot. Apparently, he's never been with a woman in his life. Will says she's the one who can't see how much experience he has. Cled, for example, must see the kid's talent and how competent he is. Lena says she doesn't agree. He's probably at 0. Then the protagonist asks if she was interested in him or not. Lena says she really is cruel, but it's true. He's kind of weird. Favorability with both of them drops to 1, and he's fuming. Back at the dojo, Caesar has to beat up all the students, and obviously he doesn't go easy on anyone. The floor explodes, the sign outside shakes, everything's breaking, and now the only thing left is the master getting choked out. A notification says Caesar defeated Gato, the academy master. And as a reward for his cruelty, he got bonus experience. His notoriety goes up by 100, and because of that, the notoriety of the whole organization goes up by 50. The protagonist gets the message and is confused. He's sure Caesar is doing something he shouldn't be doing. A little later, here we are. He arrives in front of the place, completely destroyed. The poor guys are stuck on the ground, everyone walking with canes trembling. Luna immediately says this is one hell of a mess. Rave asks what happened there. The protagonist says he doesn't really know, but the system said this place belongs to them. Then he says, there you are. What happened here? The teacher asks, wait, you're from Black Mountain too? Just from seeing the protagonist's awful face, he's already sure. Then the master gets up. I've never seen an organization as cold-blooded as yours. Why did you have to destroy the academy of a poor old man who just wanted to make money in this neighborhood? The students cry, Master, don't die. What are we going to do? Lanai's thinking that this time really was violent. Then he turns and says, I don't know what happened here, and I'm not that interested either. The guy asks who he even is and why he only showed up now. The protagonist says he's the boss of Black Mountain, and they'd better remember it. Yeah. Everything that happened here was just something one of his subordinates did, and that's that. He's an important man with a lot to achieve. Lanai praises the cruelty while he says he doesn't have time to manage a place full of sweaty guys. Even though the owner changed, he doesn't plan to change who runs it, so they'll keep operating it. Gato and the others don't really get it. They destroyed everything just to hand it back to them, but then he gets mad and tells the bastard to stop acting so full of himself. That Black Mountain boss was disrespecting them even more. The protagonist says he's being merciful. Actually, suddenly, Gato says he'll tell the truth. The academy is going bankrupt because his students keep getting taken away. The protagonist says, obviously, there must be places that give way better rewards than this. And besides, they only want to rely on martial arts. The old man explains it's not exactly that. Martial arts teach cultivation that can make you strong, but a certain academy showed up nearby with a voracious, deadly technique. Because of that new academy, a lot of his students were taken, and that's how this place ended up empty. And now, if the news spreads that they got robbed by bandits, the academy is definitely finished. The protagonist knows that whatever Caesar did, nobody's going to think he's a good person. Then out of nowhere, Gato throws himself at his feet, begging him to please take control of the academy. Lena compliments the kid, saying he can't win over women, but when it comes to sweaty guys, he's great. The old man even says he's going to crawl into the protagonist's underwear, and the protagonist tells him to get away. Then Rave says that if a failing academy comes under Black Mountain's control, it won't affect them, right? The protagonist is furious and tells everyone to stop and shut up for a second. Then he looks down and sees the old man there, and everyone kneeling thanking him while he still doesn't understand what's going on. The rest of the academy people thought it was going to be humiliating, but they're all sliding under the protagonist's legs, begging him to please take control. Later that night, we're back at the mansion he got, and the guys are practicing with Lena. Will, at that moment, only wants to know where Caesar went. Lena's having fun training while someone says, well, Caesar destroyed our place and managed to take control. When he was leaving, he mentioned he was thirsty and wanted the perfect fight. So to help the new teammate, he suggested they go to Ching Hack Academy. Will is sure there's something behind that. In his memory, he activates the boss detection skill. He flinches and tells Lena, and now at Ching Hack Academy, was Caesar in danger? Could it be? Doubt it. Scene switches to the center of the Labyrinth City. Some people are calmly practicing swordsmanship. It's Chonghak Academy. And in the middle is Master Chonghak. A guy introduces himself as Varden and says he's there to be the new instructor. The leader says he already knows, no need for all the fuss. Then the guy says the problem has already been solved too. They didn't know there was a master this powerful. Chonghak turns and says it's weird they're calling him master. To him, that was nothing but some half-baked little bandit. Varden starts to comment on the talent, but Chonghak slaps him across the face, saying he's still pathetic as always. That kind of attitude is what brought disaster to his association, just what you'd expect from useless concubine trash. Varden apologizes again and says he'll report one last detail. Besides that person, there was another mysterious human who attacked the academy. He beat up most of the trainees and everyone's injured, and the strangest part is that he seemed to be using baked techniques, the same ones taught at Gato's academy. Chonghak says it's unbelievable that legacy is still being preserved, which is perfect because now he finally has an excuse to get rid of that person. He walks out saying he'll give his friend one last chance for the concubine's son not to disappoint him. The guy clearly isn't happy, but he stutters out that it's fine. Scene cuts to Caesar tied to a post. For someone who said he wanted a perfect victory, it looks like he didn't even get a victory at all. The others stare shocked, asking if it's true. Caesar is looking like a maniac. They already found out he's the one who killed Toma from the east. If it's really him, he must be the person that guilds are looking for. Another red-haired guy says, no way. If he was that strong, how did they capture him so easily? Nobody in this academy could stand up to Toma except the master. Caesar immediately says if that's true, then he's already disappointed. They tell him to shut up, saying he's a prisoner. Then they ask what happened to the child who was walking beside Toma. Caesar says it's pretty obvious he remembers the kid telling the protagonist, "Boss, can I go to the bathroom? I need to pee." But the protagonist tells him to get back to work like he's gonna let him take breaks like that. Caesar says the kid was obviously tortured with inhuman things. They get furious demanding what he did to the young child. They don't show even the bare minimum to a prisoner. He deserves to die right there. They rush him yelling for him to die, but Caesar smiles and says he's way too impatient. Then Lena appears and hits from below, snapping the guy's sword and landing a kick right in the groin. The two of them lose it laughing. Then she turns and asks why he's laughing. He didn't do anything. He says it's been a long time since he's seen the bastard. He thought she'd be useful for dealing with these people. Is she feeling like it's time to obey him? She says it's funny. They meet again for 1 second, and he already proves he's still the same. But what's that muscle-wasting idiot doing there? Getting captured like a moron. What was he trying to do? He says he's looking for the perfect fight. Lena says he must mean he doesn't want to take any damage. If that's the case, he should take a look at her body. She's been in countless fights and still doesn't have a scratch. Besides, what's he going to learn in a place like this? You can't get stronger fighting weak people. Anyway, it just shows how stupid he is for coming to a place full of sweaty guys. He gets mad that she's so confident while she tells him to calm down a bit. Then he bursts the ropes and tells her to prove she can do a perfect fight. They face each other. She says whoever takes 1 point of damage first becomes the other's pet. But then someone shows up, sweating, saying, "Hoof, the fight isn't over yet." He draws his sword and says he won't tolerate anyone defiling this sacred ground anymore. He'll cut down all intruders even if it costs his life, but the two of them don't seem to take him seriously. They turn and decide, fine. He'll be the target of the mess. The guy realizes he interrupted something he shouldn't have, but it's too late. They charge him and he's basically done for. The next day at Big Bow Academy, Caesar asks if it's true. Will is horrified by the thought. Looks like that place Chonghak was affiliated with the biggest criminal guild. Lena was being stubborn and totally forgot about that. She tells Caesar they're pretty nasty. They poke the hornet's nest and now they're in deep trouble. The one who doesn't like this, obviously, is Will, who finds it funny. Since when are they that close? Lena says the boss doesn't know this idiot lost a bet. Will can't believe what he's seeing. She's holding his chin, telling the puppy to come here and be nice. He's furious. Warning, it's only for today. Will can't believe his 1 billion beast got reduced to this. Next chapter talks about a special event. We're rebuilding that bar the kid destroyed. The bald guy celebrates they finally finished it. He's emotional. They made it out alive again, and he hugs his friends, saying everyone worked hard. Finally, now they can go back to just being people who work at a bar. No more crime. No more getting involved in all that. Those dangerous bastards aren't around anymore. He can't believe someone like him, a simple subordinate of the criminal guild, now has his own place and is part of the extremely dangerous Black Mountain Association, even though he hates all the members. He's already imagining an amazing restaurant full of lively people. Then the door opens and he welcomes the very first customer. But it's Rave, exhausted. The bald guy asks what he's doing there. Rave says the Black Mountain boss is calling all members to a meeting. The poor guy says he wanted to celebrate. He just finished building this place, but Rave says they're calling especially for him. It's important. We get to Tomas' mansion, and the bald guy sees a paper on the wall. To the restaurant owner, destroy this entire place and rebuild it, leaving everything spotless. It has to be done before he comes back from a certain important mission. Everyone's standing around saying, "Damn, boss, there are traps all over the place. This is dangerous." And all he can think is why he's being treated like a construction worker. Then the scene switches to Lena, still holding Caesar by the chin. Suddenly, the protagonist gets warned about an invasion. Smoke starts pouring out from the doorway, and someone tells the master that this energy can only be what he thinks it is. Outside, it's Chimkak. Gato goes over and asks what he's doing there. Chimkak says it's been a long time since he's seen his fourth brother, and Gato should know exactly why he came alone. Today, Gato isn't leaving alive even if there are 10 people there. Chonghak says it's ridiculous that someone who's supposed to be walking the path of martial arts is getting mixed up with a bunch of thugs behind his back. Durang is already furious and wants to hit this guy, while Gato says, yeah, he admits it. It's shameful, but he doesn't have much time left in this world anyway. You can't hold on to pride forever, but at least he didn't have to sink to Chonghake's level, someone who stole the master's book and tweaked the techniques just so he could claim he had his own style. Even worse, he did it while working as a spy for the criminal guild. Chonghake tells him to shut up, saying that master deserved it for not passing the book down to anyone. That place was doomed to die out anyway. Gato tells him to stop lying. The master just didn't pass the book to him, Chonghake, because the bastard was mixed up with drugs, girls, and non-stop chaos. They start trading insults, dragging up all the dirty stuff from the past, while the protagonist group is standing there like, what is this drama they just got pulled into out of nowhere? After all the talking, that's enough. It's time to fight. Chonghak comes in with a purple barrage. Gato looks shaken, but he throws up his green line technique and manages to form a defensive move that redirects the attack off to the side. Chonghak says it's honestly embarrassing that Gato's martial arts are still at this level. The master tells him to stop talking, and Chonghak starts moving his arm again, forming another purple technique. The protagonist looks interested and tells Lena this fight is weirdly fun. Caesar is furious because he wanted to be part of something like this. The police show up saying the city security is going crazy and that PvP in this area is forbidden. But there's so much smoke they can't see anything. Then in the middle of it, Chonghak appears, staring them down. They recognize him instantly, and they also recognize the monster way in the back. He warns them it's a dangerous situation, 2 heads of criminal organizations involved in the same incident. He tells the soldiers to just watch for now because if they jump in, they'll be the ones who die. Meanwhile, the city hears there's going to be PvP, and people are already selling popcorn. Caesar stays hyped, saying he wants to see the old man's potential. The police start organizing to protect civilians, and the protagonist realizes this is getting way bigger than it should. With this many spectators, Black Mountain's reputation is on the line, but it's Gato fighting. The old man got beat up by Caesar yesterday, so how is he supposed to win this? They needed people not to connect this to Black Mountain. But Caesar yells to everyone, telling them to gather around and watch a Black Mountain fight that'll go down in history. The boss looks confused, and the protagonist wants to know why that idiot had to open his mouth. Now the whole city is watching, the police included, and everyone's confused. Lena says the atmosphere just got worse. The protagonist feels the tension, and now everyone's shouting that this fight is going to be insane. Lena tells the boss they're going to draw a ton of attention, and he answers that wasn't the goal. The police keep saying the citizens are getting worked up, while Chonghak says they both want to see how this ends. Gato looks like he's shaking more than anything, but he says it's fine. Today it gets decided, and he'll attack first. He prepares to use the opening of Baek Bakwan and goes in with a strike to the shoulder of gallant devotion. Chonghak stares at him and vanishes into a shadow. Someone immediately wonders what kind of magic that is, so that's what the smoke covering the whole area was for. He can't feel Chonghak's presence, and right then Chonghak appears behind him. The protagonist yells, "Gato, look behind you." But Gato blocks. Still, he's already coughing. Age is catching up. People around the city start saying this is embarrassing. What kind of filthy fight is this? What team is this guy even on? What a disgrace. The protagonist realizes the team's morale is crashing. He says, Caesar, are you seeing this? Caesar asks, seeing what? Then when he looks closely, he sees a kind of smoke coming off Gatho's arm. Gatho turns and demands to know what Chonghak did to their martial arts. Chonghak says the arts they used back then didn't match his goals. The master's narrow-mindedness kept him chained to useless traditions. Gatho says Chonghak has no idea what he's done. Turning their martial art into a killing technique like this is ridiculous. Chonghak turns and says what he found is limitless power, and instead of explaining, he'll show how this new power is different. He activates a pressure point technique and the spot he hit on Gatho explodes. The protagonist shouts that their reputation is getting destroyed while the whole city cheers, but the old man tanks it. Before he can say anything about the technique, Chonghak is right there again, saying it's not over. He lands a clean hit right in the middle of the spine, and the protagonist flinches hard. Caesar, though, is enjoying it, saying, now I get it, boss. Perfect fight is harder than I thought. Lena says she could have dodged it, while the protagonist doesn't understand why they're even worried about this. Caesar, on the other hand, is impatient for this guy to lose so he can finally get his own fight. The protagonist is furious. If Gato loses, the team's reputation is done. Gato is spitting blood, and Chonghak says his body is finished. He doesn't have much time left. Why did he get involved with Black Mountain and lure Chonghak here? Just to die like this in the end? Gato says no way in hell this is how it ends. Chonghak says what Gato wants doesn't matter. His day has come. Then Gato stands up and says it's incredible how fate can be so persistent. Chonghak doesn't get it. Gato just tells him to give it everything he's got. Everyone thinks he's about to activate some power and blow up, then a student runs in and tells the master not to do it. Gato starts activating a technique that even Chonghak is shocked by, something he never even saw in the master's book. The way he's concentrating energy, it has to be a wave-type technique. If that's the case, Chonghak needs to stop the casting, so he moves in. While Chonghak approaches, Gato thanks him for coming so close. Yeah. This was mutual destruction. The law of Bekbo detonates everything. The student calls out to the master. The police can't see anything. People keep eating popcorn while Caesar celebrates. Willow wants to know what's going to be left of their reputation in the city. When the smoke clears, the chapter ends. Damn it, the whole city is watching, and the police are tense, waiting for the answer. In the next cut, someone pushes the smoke aside. Chonghak is standing there, saying it's pathetic. That attack might grab attention, but it was useless. He points at Caesar and asks if he's next. The master student shouts that as the best disciple, he'll honor the fight now, he won't. Then he gets hit in the back of the neck. Caesar says no way they're stealing his fight again. Chonghak looks at him and says he recognizes him. Isn't he the thug who attacked their base that day? He's about to ask how Caesar escaped when Lena strokes her chin and says she saved him. Then she reveals she's kind of disappointed to learn the criminal guild she used to work for has people as weak as Chonghak. She invaded expecting it to be hard, but everyone there was ridiculously weak. It wasn't much different from the first bar they robbed and wiped out. Chonghak is furious, and the protagonist tells her to stop saying they robbed everyone. But he's nervous that a certain event is about to trigger. So he calls out to Chonghak and says he's Will, the boss of the Black Mountain Association. But Chonghak cuts him off, telling a filthy weakling like him not to interrupt while he's talking. The protagonist and Caesar get pissed. Caesar snaps, "Hey, you bastard. What are you saying to the boss?" Lena jumps in too, telling him to respect who runs this place. Doesn't he know the boss is extremely powerful but has an incurable disease? Chonghak asks if they seriously believe this guy is strong. Just with his powers sealed, the protagonist is standing there wondering how he became the topic of this. Chonghak questions whether that situation is even true, while the protagonist realizes these idiots are dragging all the attention onto them. Then Chonghak says, fine. At this rate, the discussion is over. Since their boss is so weak, from now on, Chonghak's group declares war on every Black Mountain territory. Of course, Caesar and Lena thank him, saying that's exactly what they wanted, a gang war. The whole city cheers while the police realize things are about to get even more chaotic. The event the protagonist didn't want to happen happens. With Gato dead and to protect the team's reputation, he'll have to win this gang war. At least from now on, while the event is active, criminal acts won't be punished as harshly, and whichever team wins will be considered the new monarch of the city's underworld. Back at the bar on opening day, the protagonist asks Caesar who started this whole mess they got dragged into. Caesar says obviously it was him chasing the perfect fight, just like the master ordered. The protagonist says it's ridiculous to do all this over something like that. A perfect fight is just dodging an attack. There's nothing special about it. But Caesar says no. When he watched Jungkook fight, he understood the true essence of the perfect fight. The moment he took that desperate attack, he didn't even react. He just stood there. If they wanted to call themselves winners, they had to finish that guy the same way. The protagonist is furious. That damn Caesar keeps making things harder just because he likes fighting. Sometimes the protagonist thinks it was a good idea, but maybe he really just got unlucky. It's all because of the points he spent on this guy that his life keeps getting more complicated, and now there's no way out. Again, he's in an all-or-nothing situation, so he tells Lena he has something to handle, and she better keep things under control and not do anything stupid while he's gone. He disconnects from the labyrinth and logs out. He thought he was trapped, but he's just lying in bed, totally fine. He gets up exhausted, saying there are 10 days before the war starts. In real life, that's one full day. So for now, he's going to relax. How many days have you been in that game? The blonde guy asks. He says that for a gamer who makes as much money as he does, today he looks starving, like he hadn't eaten. The protagonist doesn't answer and starts crying, and the blonde guy says he gets it. Everyone's been talking about the labyrinth lately. It seems like since the start of the game, there've been some criminals ruining the experience for all the players. Some people are saying the game's dev team basically gave up, like it's abandoned because they aren't doing anything. Then he asks if his friend is really in the new game. He was one of the strongest in version 1, so he must have tons of points. As crazy as it sounds, he must really love the game to restart in the new version. The protagonist ignores all that and asks what this thing is about the admin team giving up on the game. The blonde sits down and says that's what people are saying. All he can tell the protagonist is that since he has experience running Rodrigo Elrigo, the game is in his hands. He has to be the positive influence that pushes everyone in the right direction. Then we see the protagonist ranked 97 in the Labyrinth City, and orphanage director was the kids class. The protagonist says humans can be limitless when they have to be. Basically, he becomes the biohack king, starts taking a bunch of energy meds, and goes into VR. It doesn't look like the solution to becoming immortal, but fine. Still, apparently, that's how he became the legendary Rodrigo Elrigo who dominated everything solo. But right now, he has a problem that can only be solved in real life. He's walking through the city saying a lot has changed. There's no way the kid spent 15 years in VR, and it looks like that blonde friend is one of the people involved in developing the game, which is why he can be trusted when he says they're abandoning everyone and letting them do whatever they want. They know this game makes a ton of money, so there has to be some other reason behind it. And since his friend looks sad, it probably has to do with new players not enjoying the game. It's a shame this might have a direct connection to Caesar. In it, he tells his friend not to worry, that he'll do his best to make the game enjoyable. But what about the friend? He's playing too, so what's he doing? The guy goes, "Hey Hoyong, I'm gonna tell you a secret, okay? But don't tell anyone. I'm in a criminal guild." Even if he's just some low-rank kid, he's still in a pretty good spot. I mean, he looks like that blonde kid, doesn't he? And he's warning that the only problem is that the boss is a total bastard because that idiot bet their whole guild on a fight against a criminal organization. Wait, is it that Chung Hack one? They're showing him. Yeah, that's it. Because he says they're going up against some new guild called Black Mountain, which he's never even heard of. When he says that, the protagonist gets excited. He just got an important source of information, and we're back at the Chung Hack building. The guy who got beaten up is saying he almost died, suffocated because of Warden. The fat guy who goes, "Ryumu, do you have any idea what kind of trouble you caused the master with the stupid crap you pulled?" He complains, saying there wasn't much he could do. He got caught off guard. But then the fat guy starts walking away, telling him to remember that Gato just died because of the master himself. Meaning, if he's useless in the war that's about to happen between the academies, he might lose his life too. But the guy says he's excited. They're saved now. The fat guy says he really doesn't get the situation at all. He's an idiot. We're outside. Okay, I get it. They want to get rid of the master, but the fat guy is sure there's no way they can lose. He still doesn't know what Chun Kak learned from those books, but if it were possible, he would have beaten him already. Still, the moment that guy slapped him in the face and he couldn't even feel it, he realized that staying on Chun Kak's side is the best option. But then, all of a sudden, he's surrounded by smoke. He turns to see what's going on, but Lena is already behind him. In 1 second, the fat guy is knocked out, and that fat guy is his friend, Warden. Lena calls out to him, telling the chubby guy to spill all the secrets of the criminal guild, what Shankak's martial secrets were. The fat guy is furious, saying they have no idea who they're messing with. Lena says that's exactly why they're here, to get the information. The protagonist yells for her not to kill him yet, but she's arguing there, and the two of them are acting like idiots. Then the protagonist says, "I know who you are, Warden. Too bad your power doesn't really mean much out here on the streets." And honestly, I was really disappointed. Even though Chong-hek was a martial artist, he was clearly using techniques that shut down physical attacks, something that definitely goes against the martial code. Looks like his gang was blinded by power and was ignoring basic training. He's saying that while it shows Caesar yawning for no reason, the fat guy says that isn't always an option. And unfortunately, now it's too late. No one is going to be able to beat Chong-hek until the protagonist asks if he's sure and tells him to take a look at his subordinate, the one he spent billions on. The guy says that's impossible unless he was some famous ranked player. What would someone like that with that many points be doing there, getting involved in the city's underworld? It doesn't make sense. If he were a real ranked player, he should be out hunting dungeons and leveling up way faster than everyone else. While Leza says he was sharp to notice that, the protagonist stops to think that it makes sense. He really did lose track of what he wants to do in this game. Then Cedric threatens them, saying that's enough. This guy talks too much. Since he's not going to be useful, it'd be better to just dig a grave for him already. The fat guy asks if they're serious. Seeing that Cedric really is going to kill him without hesitation, he says fine, he'll tell them Chong-hak's secrets, and the protagonist apologizes to him. Then the scene switches to Bakbo's academy at the kids' place, where the fat guy says he's going to teach them everything.